Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is one of the most unique and deeply layered tales ever told through a game. With so much hidden meaning, motive, and subtext behind every character, enemy, and the many places we visit, this video will explore it all, peeling back the story's layers of canvas to find the secrets of Lumière, Nevrons, and Gestrals, as well as answer questions like why does Monoco love feet, who are the writers, how does time work, and much more. So stick around to learn everything about all the bosses, characters, and lore in Expedition 33. Spoilers ahead, of course, but we will be breaking things down by act, so nothing world-shatteringly major immediately. Just please don't spoil parts that you haven't played yet. Seriously. A massive thanks as always to my patrons and channel members for making videos like this possible, especially my Legend tier patron Chris Hernandez, for continually insisting that I play this game to begin with. It has, without question, been one of the best gaming experiences of my entire life. But now let's kick things off on the day of Gamage 33. We begin in the crumbling city of Lumière. Set against a decaying Eiffel Tower, beautiful, but immediately clear that this world is dying. Blue, chroma-infused rock consuming vast swaths of the city, with other monuments like the Arc de Triomphe fractured into pieces. A microcosm for this world as a whole. In the opposite direction sits a significantly larger monolith, with written upon it the number 34. This structure first appeared 67 years ago, after a catastrophic event called the Fracture literally tore this world apart, beginning a slow and terrifying countdown. Heralded by a giant stone-like woman named the Paintress, at first this monolith displayed 100. In that same year, the first expedition, known as Expedition 0, ventured out onto the continent to try and understand what had happened to their world. A lot more on them and all of the other expeditions later on in the video. Every year, on the anniversary of the monolith's appearance, this number ticked down by 1, and some of the very elderly would vanish. This wasn't too much of a problem at first. In fact, in the immediate years that followed, Lumière barely noticed. There weren't that many people in their 90s, and disappearances were regarded as purely coincidental. The fracture had been catastrophic enough. Much of Lumière still remained on the continent, leaving families separated and homes lost, with most likely assuming that the disappearing elderly had simply had enough. That was until Monolith Year 85. Thanks to an Instagram post from the game's lead writer, Jennifer Svedberg-Yen, we know that 85 was the first year Lumière officially bore witness to a Gamage. By this point, the changing number had at least been noted as a yearly event, always taking place at sunset, with citizens gathering at the harbour to see the Paintress. But as the number turned from 86 to 85, two elderly twins, Anne and Gabrielle, vanished out of existence for all to see. A year later, this observation would have been confirmed once again, prompting the resumption of expeditions to the continent, people realising that eventually this number would get so low that their society would be entirely wiped out. Their only hope being to somehow stop this event whilst there were still people to do so. Fast forward to now, and it's the day of the Gamage once again. 34 is now the maximum age in Lumière, and by sunset it'll be 33. Anyone who is 33 at the time of the Gamage will be erased, but people who turn that age afterwards will be safe for another year. It's here that we first meet Gustave and Maelle, two of our core protagonists. Gustave is a genius engineer whose inventions have benefited Lumière greatly, whilst Maelle is kind of his adopted daughter/younger sister, whose real parents Gamaged when she was only 3. Today, Gustave is seeing his former lover Sophie, who's due to Gamage come the evening. The two were once incredibly well suited, but broke up after disagreeing about having children. Sophie thought it cruel to bring them into this world knowing they'd be orphaned, whilst Gustave was more hopeful, truly believing that he and the other expeditioners could change things for those who come after. It's clear when the two reunite that they still have feelings for each other, but, well, on the day one of you is destined to die, what more can you do now but simply smile and be there? With the Gamage now an established, unavoidable yearly tragedy, the citizens of Lumière try at least to make it a ceremony, decorating the docks, playing music, hanging red and white garlands around the necks of those soon lost, trying their best to pretend everything is okay when it absolutely isn't. All Sophie can say to people as she passes them for the last time is, "See you." And despite ongoing recruitment efforts for new expeditions, volunteer numbers are declining every year. Many people now have younger children and are unwilling to voluntarily make them early orphans, while some, like Maxime, have even stronger opinions.
None of you ever come back. You go and you take our resources and you waste it all on a fucked up hero adrenaline fantasy. And still, she kills us. We hope And we persevere, and still they die. They all die, and we can't stop it. We can't save them. We bring another generation into this world just so they can watch us die before they're even old enough to understand why.
Unhelpfully hopeless as Maxime's attitude is, the point about expeditions taking resources does actually have more meaning than he understands, for reasons we'll later come to. Now, every trash can in this prologue can be interacted with, which gave me the sense that one at least would be more than just a perfectly normal trash can. Finding the glowing green one proved that theory correct.
I'll turn 33 today, can you believe my luck? Why would my parents choose the worst time? But I have a strategy. If I hide myself here, the Paintress won't think of gommaging me. I've been hiding for 6 months now. So leave and don't tell anyone I'm here.
Yeah, no, don't worry like that, mate. Sorry. Morbidly funny as this interaction is, though, it also clearly defines the age rules related to the gommage. If you are the age of the monolith when it changes, then you will disappear, even if it's your birthday. Before this happens, though, we can fight our first true enemy right here in Lumière. The mimes will be a recurring foe, cropping up in obscure places throughout the game, and unlike most other things, their origins are hard to pin down, lacking in the same defined lore as the rest of the continent's creatures, with this one's presence in Lumière merely adding to the mystery. But we'll come back to many more foes later. Shortly before the gommage, Gustave's apprentices, young admirers of his engineering prowess, provide him a new expedition uniform, custom fitted with the help of Sophie to accommodate for his prosthetic arm, proving that Sophie still cared for Gustave even before their reunion. A suited up Gustave then is one of the last things Sophie will see, a final shred of hope that those who come after may not share her fate. As the sun forms an eclipse behind the monolith, the Paintress appears, as she does every year. And with a few simple hand gestures, 34 becomes 33. Around the dock, people begin to fade into red petals. Lovers hand in hand, parents still holding their children, and finally, Sophie, staring into the eyes of the man she could have had a life with had the nature of this world not been so cruel.
I'm here.
As Sophie fades away, we perhaps realize in this moment the sheer level of tragedy Lumière must face every year, helping us to understand just how much is riding on the expeditions. With only a year now before the next gommage, Expedition 33 is due to set off immediately the next day, after just one evening of mourning, drinking, and preparation. Around this area are several interactable characters, some of whom we'll get to know significantly better later, others we won't be seeing very much of after today. But the main goal here is to get all 3 items from these stalls, including a broken Pictos, a new hairstyle for Gustave, and most importantly, an old key, which will unlock a door to a special journal entry much later on. The 2 extra tokens we'll need are obtained by beating Maelle in a duel and answering Antoine's trivia questions correctly, which lore-wise should be easy for Gustave, but are a great way for establishing key lore to the player about the Fracture and Expedition Zero. Finally, we'll bid goodbye to Gustave's sister Emma, who despite understanding the importance of the expeditions for Lumière's morale, also sees it as a bloodless guillotine, knowing everyone will most likely be killed by Nevrons. Still, she leads us into Act 1 with one hell of a speech.
Tomorrow comes. Thanks to you. Expedition 33.
Despite the high morale Expedition 33 sent out with, their landing at a place called Dark Shores goes significantly worse than they expected. Immediately, it's clear that this has been the landing site of many expeditions over the years, but none likely expected to come face to face with a white-haired expeditioner clearly too old to still be alive.
Which expedition are you from?
One swipe of his cane beheads their expedition leader. Further explosions separate Gustave and Maelle as Gustave blurrily sees somebody move towards her. Most of Expedition 33 are then killed by some of the continent's deadliest Nevrons, Noirs, which in French means simply black. In the ensuing chaos, Gustave, by sheer luck, survives, waking up alone in the significantly calmer area of the Spring Meadows. As he doubles back across the bodies of those who fell around him, Gustave eventually comes across a horrific sight. A pile of expeditioner bodies who haven't gamaged like everyone does in Lumière, but rather have become stone-like in appearance, with some also coagulating into this terrifying thing. Immediately devoid of all hope, perhaps believing himself the sole survivor in this moment, Gustave resorts to join his fellow expeditioners.
You do that, we both die.
Luckily though, Lune survived as well. The daughter of two scholars who left on Expedition 46, she is the member of the group most concerned with the academic side of things. Skilled in battle, of course, but generally preferring to focus on theory, research, and cataloguing other expeditions. It was she, in fact, who chose Dark Shores as their landing site, believing it to be the same one used by Expedition 0, the only expedition ever known to reach the Monolith and have survivors return to Lumière. And now, in this darkest of moments, Lune's dedication to the mission above all else spurs both of them on. After first dealing with a wandering Nevron, this one is called a portier, the French word for doorman, no doubt because it's basically a giant walking door. Now, most of the Nevrons collectively share a deep origin, and there's very much a system in the lore by which they propagate the continent, but we'll learn how exactly a while later. Defeating this Nevron allows Gustave to prove that his invention, the Lumina Converter, works, allowing the party to absorb the Lumina of Nevrons, which in turn means they can equip a potentially unlimited number of Pictos. See, past expeditions could only hold 3 Pictos at a time. 3 perks, essentially, that can provide special abilities in battle. But with the Lumina Converter, additional Pictos can now be equipped as Luminas, opening up a world of new and insane party synergies which weren't an option for those who came before. In fact, unequipping everybody's Luminas, especially later on into the game, should give you some insight into how much tougher things were for expeditions before 33. Now a party of 2 though, Gustave and Lune venture onwards, with a revitalized hope that others may have survived. It isn't long before they uncover more signs of expeditions that came before. Expedition flags are planted all over the continent, and aside from being a resting and leveling up checkpoint, no doubt inspired by Souls-like campfires, they're also crucial to building an understanding of the lore. Every expedition flag is clearly numbered, showing just where on the continent each expedition went. In this instance, it's clear that 81, the 3rd expedition ever, according to expedition journals, also came through the Spring Meadows. Many of their bodies can be found, again perfectly preserved out here, often laying beside old Pictos that we could say were left for those who come after, and can now strengthen our own expedition. This game absolutely rewards exploring down every path. A lot of care has clearly been taken to reward investigation, but even better than that, every new discovery, every dead expeditioner or abandoned Pictos manages to tell just a little more story. Reaching a more open area, with the monolith back in view, a new piece of soundtrack begins to play. Now, what with this being a French studio, most of the lyrics are sung in French, but in this particular instance, it's in English. And pay attention to some of the lyrics here, because they're going to be very important to the lore and what's to come. Namely, the song discusses ink being the blood of life, a lot of lines about time and the abundance of it, and that we don't need to fear our time running out. Interesting at this point, given that gommage literally means the opposite of that. It also then goes on to say that every sorrow is born from love, all brilliant foreshadowing to the wider plot of Clair Obscur. Further into the Spring Meadows, we'll face the Volesta Nevrons, flying enemies which allow us to make use of ranged combat attacks, with the word Volesta likely being a play on the French word voler, meaning to fly. Additionally, we'll fight one of the first named bosses, the Chromatic Lancelier, a larger version of the humanoid yet tree-like Nevrons native to the Spring Meadows, no doubt so named after the lance used as its main weapon. It can be a tough fight, especially earlier on, so can be returned to later if need be. Aside from being a tougher variant though, chromatic named Nevrons don't seem to have any particular special story surrounding them, a trend that appears to hold for every chromatic Nevron in the game. Nevrons in general do still have plenty of lore though, but again, we'll get to it later. Continuing through the Spring Meadows, we'll also find some handholds, a game mechanic that could just be taken for granted, but no, they were actually placed here by a former expedition, again laying the path for those who come after.
Someone came here before and set up these handholds.
Probably Expedition 69, the Climbers Expedition.
Not the last time we'll hear from this expedition, who did a very important and nice job across the whole continent. Next up, we'll find another two things very important to the lore. The first being an expedition journal. Every single expedition, as far as we know, left one of these behind, giving plenty of insight into those who came before, and we'll explore each in this video as we come across them.
Learn from the ones who came before.
And lay the trail for the ones who come after.
The Journal of Expedition 81, who 48 years ago came across this same white-coloured jar Nevron. Excited by the fact that they could communicate with it, this entry was cut short by something unknown. Gustave and Lune then make a crucial observation on how this world works, though at this point don't understand its significance.
The dead here don't disappear like in Lumière. Their chroma stays inside their bodies.
On the beach, some did disappear.
He wasn't a Nevron.
Something about the way Nevrons kill seems to affect our chroma.
So expeditioners killed by Nevrons maintain their chroma upon death, whereas those who gamage or are killed by the white-haired man do not. Now face to face with the first unhostile Nevron, this jar is desperate for light, promising that it would never have plunged the surrounding dead expeditioners into darkness. Whilst the purpose of most Nevrons seems to only be killing expeditioners, this one wants something different. More directly related to its outward appearance perhaps, a lantern-bearing jar seeking the light. The first of a handful of friendlier Nevrons that we'll later come across. When asked here if it was created by the Paintress, the jar, slightly confused, seems to confirm that. So let's just roll with that assumption for now. After heading through a darker region of the Spring Meadows, Gustave and Lune finally reunite with a third expeditioner called Leo. Yeah, he's not joining the party. And as still a group of two, we're then forced to fight a really quite big Nevron called Avik, French for bishop, which fits with its robes and tall hat-like heads. It can also summon abbests, which could be derived from abbot and have heads again reflecting that kind of headwear. Very much a French clergy theme going on here. Winning this fight in what's going to be recurring awesome fashion, the two are finally given a piece of genuine hope.
There's a message on the wall. Took Maelle to the weird corals. Head north, look for a door inside a hut.
Maelle.
And whilst Gustave is more than ready to follow this message to the letter, Lune is far more cautious, insisting they follow their expedition protocols and worrying this could be a trap. Again, Lune is a stickler for protocol and rules, whilst Gustave is more willing to improvise when in the field.
There's a reason it's protocol. We designed it to yield the optimal result in the vast majority of situations.
Was our entire team dying part of that optimal result?
Finally agreeing to follow the message for lack of a better option, we as players leave the Spring Meadows and are introduced to the wider continent. Artistically scaled for ease of player traversal, the continent gives a general impression of size and scope without forcing hours of lore-accurate trekking. Though even out in these open regions, Nevrons still wander and can be fought on approach. After a while of travel, Lune insists that we need to rest if we're to find Maelle safely, introducing us to our camp. A place that always appears the same no matter where we are on the continent, meaning we either literally travel back to and rest in the exact same spot every day, something that doesn't make much sense right now, or it's a case that we camp in different places lore-wise, and this is a stylistic choice of game design. It makes sense from a production standpoint. Why expend time and resources creating different camps when, if anything, it could be a hindrance on gameplay? From a practical standpoint, always returning to the same area allows you to learn where everything is. Camp will only be used for upgrading weapons and checking in with characters, so there's no need for a new environment every time, similar to Baldur's Gate 3. At camp, Gustave and Lune cannot agree. Gustave wants to find Maelle as soon as possible, while Lune is concerned about everything they don't yet understand, namely how there's an older, white-haired, very powerful and hostile man still alive out here. And even though they've been preparing for this mission their whole lives, all Gustave wants now is to find Maelle and go home, leading to one of the best dialogues in the whole game, though that's admittedly a very long list.
We have a mission!
Oh, fuck the mission! Fuck the mission, Lune! What are we gonna do, huh? Tell me. What are we gonna do? We're gonna take down the Paintress, just the three of us? My gun and your sparks?
I didn't take you for a coward.
I'm not a coward.
You swore the oath. When one falls, we continue.
Yes, I know.
When one falls. When one falls. Not if, when. We knew not all of us would make it, but we continue. As long as even one of us stands, our fight is not over.
But I'm not afraid to fight, it's just Maelle,
Maelle swore the same oath!
I know that!
She chose her life. You and I... Come on, we always said the future of Lumière is more important than
any individual life, yes.
Do you still believe that? Do you still believe that? Do you?
I hope I do.
And that's the attitude, the way that the people of Lumière have had to think over the last 67 years. Admittedly, not all of them have stuck to this principle. Many with families understandably chose to stay home, but as we'll see from the number of dead expeditioners out here, when one falls, we continue, is the belief that has kept so many before us going and has laid the path ahead. Before going to sleep each night, Gustave also writes in the journal from his apprentices, continuing the tradition of leaving behind intel for those who come after. And though it's unlikely that Gustave will ever have a means of returning this journal to Lumière, he hopes that one day, somehow, his apprentices will be able to read this. The following day, still with little recourse but to follow the message, we enter the region of Flying Waters, an area that feels like it's underwater, with the environment reacting that way and bubbles surfacing upwards, yet the air around us remains dry and breathable. How exactly does that work? Well, let's just say for now that the physics of this world don't always make sense. In fact, they barely ever do, though that nonsensical nature will in itself make sense later. Flying Waters was the landing site of Expedition 68. Whose boat was lifted into the air by a storm and crashed down here. Now, each new environment comes with a host of new Nevrons, this time themed around water. Luster is a humanoid-shaped thing, but only has sharp points for hands and feet. Its name may be referencing the sheen of unoxidized metal that it's coated in. There's also the Demoneur, French for minesweeper or bomb disposal expert, who ironically all hold sea mines, like balloons. Before long, we'll reach the door inside a hut from the message, which when entered seems to transport us to a completely different region. A giant sprawling manor complex laden in the finest decor of the early 20th century. Currently, most of the doors are locked, and we'll see the first expedition flag of our own, 33, which can surely only have been planted by Maelle. In the one open room of the manor, she is sitting with a typewriter and expedition journal, almost unable to believe her eyes as she and Gustave heartwarmingly reunite. Currently, all she can remember is collapsing on the beach, then waking up here, alongside this creepy-looking guy. A man extremely faded in appearance, with a huge gaping hole where his face ought to be. Meet the Curator, who for some reason has been training Maelle and can upgrade our weapons when provided with chroma catalysts, the second edge that Expedition 33 is going to have over those who came before. First, unlimited lumina with the Lumina Converter, then significantly more powerful weaponry thanks to the Curator. This guy also emits a small bleed of red petals, the same ones that people turn into when they gamage. After a small training session, the Curator permits us to leave and becomes thereafter a permanent upgrade station at our camp. After leaving the manor, now a trio, we're greeted by another continent inhabitants, a much more friendly kind, whose favourite things to do are play fighting and trading, called Gestrals, humanoid yet faceless wooden paintbrush people who only speak in French. And where Lune would usually pick up on details, like who the hell is this Verso that Gestral mentioned, she's far too excited by the existence of Gestrals themselves.
So the tales are true. Perhaps the grandest in the Esquie exist too. Are there more Gestrals like you? I'd love to meet them.
This Gestral is called Noco, and informs the party that in order to reach the Paintress, we'll need a means of crossing the sea. So we'll have to go to the Gestral Village to find out more. First though, we'll meet our second friendly white Nevron, this time a Demonieur lacking its ocean mine balloon. Fortunately, we can procure one very nearby, which simply seems to make the Nevron happy. Giving these ones what they want does not turn them hostile, but nor does it provide them with any colour. So it isn't necessarily the lack of a thing that makes them different, but something else that sets them apart. On the way through Flying Waters, we pass even more water-themed Nevrons. Brewlers are anchor-wielding creatures, very similar in design to Lusters, with their name meaning to burn, even though they're water-based and don't use any fire attacks. Though they may be named to rhyme with this larger variant called a cruller, possibly referencing a French pastry, despite looking like some big coral thing, though they aren't nearly as big as the bourgeon. French for flower bud, with the same Nevron stick legs, but a huge flower bud head that can launch poison and literally eat expeditioners. The first of these we meet was likely also the doom of Expedition 68, who crash-landed here in that giant storm. Their journal is just before it, recounting how prior to this point, they'd crushed every Nevron in this place. That was until this one seemingly ate all of them. Yeah, some expeditions really didn't get very far, though to be fair, 68 seems to have particularly terrible luck. But with our additional skills, defeating the bourgeon isn't too hard, leading to an area that's strangely familiar. Ruined streets now consumed by coral, and a sign pointing the way to the Port de Lumière and Tour Eiffel, which is just French for Eiffel Tower. Clearly these ruins used to be a part of Lumière, but during the fracture were split off and scattered to here, miles away from anything else. In one direction there'll be a chromatic troubadour, a name for a French poet or musician, and these guys wield giant trumpets as weapons. The other way though, blocking our exit from Flying Waters, is a significantly tougher boss. Guarding a chamber of flowers, Goblu is the first Nevron not to attack until Gustave plucks a rose. Its name doesn't have a specific translation, but it could simply be a monsterish sounding name similar to Goblin. After dodging or parrying its multiple attempts to sit on us, Goblu eventually gives up, and Maelle, finding this Nevron eerily familiar, reaches out as it flees. The first of many deja vu stints that she's going to experience. Leaving Flying Waters, Maelle is plagued with visions of burning and another white-haired man, this one younger than the guy from the beach. She also makes a mutual promise with Gustave that neither will throw their life away needlessly.
Promise me. Run. Especially if we meet the man from the beach. We can't face him. You see him, you run.
Only if you do the same.
Oh, I'm running as soon as I see a strand of white hair, trust me. You won't even see me, I'm running so fast.
Oh, please, you're an old man. I can outrun you any day.
Yeah, right.
With spirits slightly lifted for all, we then make to the ancient sanctuary, the path to the Gestral Village. On the way, encountering a new creature called the Patunk, which, unlike most Nevrons, flees when approached. To engage in combat with this one, we literally have to chase it down and hit it, with only a few turns then to defeat it before it flees, but victory always providing excellent loot. Why such different behaviour from this one? Well, Patunk is a French sport, basically the same as balls, where you throw large metal balls as close as possible to a smaller target ball. Patunk itself is ball-shaped in nature, and little balls are often used in its move repertoire. So maybe the developers are referencing a game they'd played during downtime, or perhaps it was played by whoever created the Nevrons. Around the corner, we'll shortly meet the other most French-sounding foe in the game, but first is the ghost of a young boy, an entirely grey figure with notable similarities to the curator. Fading petals, a hole where his face ought to be, capable of communicating yet having no audible voice. When asked who exactly he is, he'll just say, a dream, an illusion. I don't really remember what I did all this for. I miss laughing with everyone. Ren, Clay, what were their names? Why do I forget? Everything is washed away. Before falling silent and speaking no more. I think it's relatively clear that this boy is an echo of something or someone. Who, we don't yet know, but he'll be cropping up a lot more across the continent, so plenty of time to piece all of that together. Now into a clearing surrounded by dead Nevrons, all killed by this.
Oh fuck. Hey, we're not Nevrons!
Meet the Sakapatat, a Gestral creation designed to keep Nevrons at bay from their settlements, but apparently not designed well enough to distinguish between Nevrons and humans. Sakapatat means exactly what you think it means, sack of potatoes, likely giving insight into what exactly these things are made of. And for a game so heavy in places, lighter moments like this can be brilliantly funny. After defeating the Sakapatat, we'll be taken to the Gestral Village, discovering the fate of Expedition 63 along the way, who had tried to reach the Paintress by travelling in cars. Not necessarily a terrible idea, but cars are built to go on roads, not across steep terrain, and these were quickly destroyed by the Sakapatats. At the end of this region, before entering the village, we must then first prove ourselves by defeating the ultimate Sakapatat. And again, whilst most of the serious parts of this game are scored with beautiful, yet heavy and emotional songs, the Gestral and Sakapatat soundtrack is significantly more upbeat, almost club techno vibes, in an era otherwise based in the early 1900s. Having fully demonstrated our prowess, we're formally invited to the Gestral Village to meet Golgra, chief of Gestrals and one of, if not their most powerful warrior, whose respect we've earned by defeating the ultimate Sakapatat. Thanks to Golgra, we learn that we indeed aren't the first expedition to come through here, and that we were lucky to survive the white-haired man who's also attacked the Gestral Village in the past. Since he also destroyed our boat though, we'll now have to seek out the help of Esquie, the legendary being that Lune previously mentioned. But to get to him, we'll need Golgra's password, which she'll only provide if we can win the Gestral tournament. Again, Gestrals really love fighting, just not to the death, not deliberately anyway. And that's not the only childlike thing about them. Their entire way of communicating is childish. There's also a second door to the manor in the village, one of many we'll find across the continent, almost as though the manor is another dimension entirely. And according to the Gestral guarding this one, these doors have never opened before, at least not for them, suggesting there's something special about us permitting our entry to the manor, except that's immediately disproved. Inside this door is a Gestral that found its way into the kitchens and ate so much that it's potentially died of overconsumption, like a pet when you leave the door open to a place with food. Back in the village, we can find the journal of Expedition 52, who also competed in the Gestral fights pretty unsuccessfully.
How can Gestral broke my skull? What the fuck kind of friendly fight was that? Oh, I'm bleeding out, but their medic is bloody useless. He just keeps telling me about his bone problems.
Sorry, but that's actually just pretty funny. We'll come back to Gestral lore later, but winning the Gestral arena fights will then reunite with our fourth and final surviving member of Expedition 33, Sciel, a teacher back in Lumière, as well as a former close friend to Sophie, through whom she met Gustave. When separated at Dark Shores, Sciel was fortunate enough to be saved by a Gestral before being escorted here. Believing everybody else to be dead and with little other recourse, Sciel then turned her skills towards fighting in the arena, excelling and becoming known as the Stranger. No doubt her use of card-based abilities is also particularly entertaining for the Gestrals, as even around here, we can see many of them have a love of casinos and gambling. After giving them all an epic expeditioner showdown, Golgra finally gives us the password.
Get out of my way!
The password is get out of my way.
Very Gestralish.
With that, the way to Esquie lies open, but before we can head there, it's time to make camp once again. Now reunited, Sciel and Gustave reminisce about their time working on Aqua Farm 3 with Sophie, an engineering project designed to feed much of Lumière and something else that made Gustave a renowned engineer. But though Aqua Farm 3 fed thousands, it got them no closer to defeating the Paintress and stopping this ever-diminishing cycle. As the group get excited about meeting Esquie, Maelle is suddenly thrown into this timeless black and white visionscape, where standing before her is a masked, clearly scarred white-haired girl, another stranger connected somehow to the white-haired man from the beach.
Alicia, I told you to stay home. It's not good for you to see this. Yes, I understand. It's her fault, and she doesn't even know it. But you can't be here.
What are you talking about? What's my fault? What is this?
You should never have come. You're only going to make things worse.
for everyone. Now take your friends and go home. Let them spend their final year in peace. This is your only warning.
Emerging from the vision, Maelle is both terrified and confused, and so too, probably, are we. But it's clear at least that Maelle is more important to this whole thing than we may have at first realized, but how exactly remains yet to be seen. With more questions than answers, the group have little choice but to press on to Esquie's cave, shouting the password they fought so hard to obtain.
Golgra said to shout the password as loud as we can. Well, Gustave, you're the loudest.
Really?
Get out of my way!
Jeez, tu pochino va, parino.
No, it's just it's the password.
Rico femicola, gor granda vari bombi no passwordito. Gomiku rapito sava.
Some classic great banter from Golgra right there.
Look, I am very sorry. It's just that Golgra told us that's the password, and
Come on, it's a Gestral. He'll have forgotten in about a minute.
So Gestrals love fighting, they love stuff and food, they talk to each other in a way that's childlike and matter-of-fact, and they're quick to forget things. Ring any bells? Any similarities to anything else? Well, we'll get to it later. As we make our way to Esquie, Maelle is once again struck by a strong sense of déjà vu.
Bonjour, mes amis.
Hey, bonjour mon ami. Sciel? What? I don't know. He seems nice.
Oh, it's you. Hello again, my terrible swimmer friend. You finally come to learn to swim?
No. I'm not that fond of water.
Weird that Esquie appears already familiar with Sciel, but time is of the essence, so we'll have to gloss past that for now. Esquie, being nice, agrees to ferry us, but can't do so without a special item.
I will need Flory.
Who's Flory?
One of my rocks.
Rocks?
See? Flory helps me swim. But Flory was stolen by my arch nemesis. One whose every step shakes the foundation of the world. The one known as Francois.
Okay, so to have the strength to cross the ocean with the four of us, Esquie is going to need a special rock called Flory. Sounds almost like a childish magical rule, but okay. Luckily, Francois lives in the very same cave, so heading over to him, we come face to face with Esquie's terrifying arch nemesis.
Who dares enter my lair? You can't just walk into someone's home without knocking. That is incredibly rude.
Francois is an incredibly moody, sort of turtle-shaped being, though one that lacks any legs. And whilst he can't move, he nonetheless challenges us to a fight when we ask for Flory. His attack literally described as the strongest ice attack ever, able to one-shot whichever expeditioner is unfortunate enough to be hit by it. Overcoming that though, Francois begrudgingly hands over Flory.
But know that I will never stop chasing you.
But you can't move.
Unfortunately, it turns out that this rock isn't actually Flory. In fact, it isn't one of Esquie's special rocks at all. Yeah, he has more than one of them, and this is none of them.
I can do much more than swim. I can fly into space. I used to fly all the time with my best friend Verso.
That's the second time we've heard the name Verso now. Noco said it as well. And once again, the group doesn't question it. All we know is that the real Flory is in Stonewave Cliffs, somewhere Esquie can carry us to by land. He's just not strong enough to do that yet on water. Before leaving this cave though, we can first learn the fate of Expedition 66. Probably one of the most tragically stupid ways that any expedition has been wiped out, by eating the very deadly mushrooms adorning Esquie's cave.
Damn you, Esquie, and your stupid mushrooms. Your friend ate them with no problem, but it also seems your friend was immortal.
And fair play to Esquie, it seems at the time he was pretty sad about, accidentally killing this whole expedition. But much more interestingly is the fact that Esquie has an immortal friend. Perhaps we'll learn more as we journey onwards. In the interim, before entering Stonewave Cliffs, Gustave confesses to Sciel that back in the Spring Meadows, before Lune found him, he almost ended things. And from Sciel's response, it's clear that at some point in the far past, she'd attempted to do the same, surviving thanks to an unknown rescuer.
I'm just glad Lune found you. Before it was too late. Just like whoever found me.
Come nighttime, Maelle is hit with more mysterious visions. The masked girl, Alicia, the older white-haired man, and the other mysterious stranger. This time standing in the manor as it burns. And Maelle can't help but get the sense that the former two at least know her, in a way that she perhaps doesn't even know herself.
I envy them. Those who can't see. Those who know not. That they are not. And those who live, blithe and free, sins forgotten, and thus absolved.
Incredibly cryptic, almost more of a poem, but it perhaps gives the impression that this Alicia is almost jealous of Maelle. Heading into Stonewave Cliffs, we again see the scattered ruins of what may have once been Lumière, along with a Ferris wheel that Gustave explains was used by Expedition 50 as a means of attempting to cross the world, though at this point it sounds like he could almost be joking. In the sky above, Esquie gives a demonstration, teasing the true extent of his power.
So, wait. Esquie is that powerful?
Apparently so, but also lazy.
Perhaps Esquie thinks that if he did all the work for us, then that wouldn't be much of an adventure. Being a new area, the Stonewave Cliffs is also home to some new Nevrons. The Hexka is a rock creature, again with little pointy legs, but a large body containing six-sided rock formations, hence its name. Rocher then seems like a lesser version of a Hexka and is simply French for rock, comprising of a single hexagon stone. Greatsword cultists are one of the few to have a distinctively English name. The French word for them would have just been cultiste, so interesting that they deliberately avoided that with this one. Defeating these will come face to lack of face with the same ghostly boy from earlier, who again speaks cryptically, suggesting that they are not from here, and warning us of a particular creature further ahead, beautiful but deadly, created by someone who was once this boy's best friend but who outgrew him, moving on to more important things. Further in the cliffs, we'll meet our third white Nevron, a Hexka this time, describing itself as abandoned and incomplete, left by its mistress to jealously look on at all the shining completed Hexkas, merely wanting to glisten like them. Something we can help with by procuring shiny rocks from a nearby cave. That's the second creature that's asked us to find rocks today. With that done, the Hexka will be far happier, sharing that its mistress made it, and those like it, with great pride and care, but that the white ones we see were accidentally made imperfect, and thus were abandoned before they could be completed. Of course, we assume this mistress to be the Paintress, but the Hexka suggests that they are not the same person, implying that it was created by something or someone else entirely. Perhaps the Paintress therefore has underlings or can take on different forms, but one thing is certain: Nevrons are created by someone. 4 more journals in Stonewave Cliffs can also explain the fates of 4 expeditions. 78 is found amidst the ruins of airships, which these guys stole illegally from the Lumière Council, attempting to reach the Paintress by air, but crashing down here, much too far south of the Monolith. 56 were mostly killed directly by the white-haired man, with their remaining numbers then attempting to get revenge by capturing and interrogating Alicia, presumably also all dying either by her hand or the white-haired man coming to her rescue. 54 were defeated by a huge chromatic Hexka, and the author of this one instead decided to make a point about Lumière politics, explaining that those who dare to question the council very usually found themselves sent on the next expedition. Clearly, the people in charge had also used the expeditions over the years to remove anyone spreading dissent in society, further tightening their own grip on power before inevitably gommaging. Finally, remember that Ferris wheel? Well, turns out Gustave was actually right. This was used by Expedition 50 to cross the world, but after getting it caught on a sea serpent, they were left stranded at the Stonewave Cliffs, and would have gommaged or been killed not long after. After finding all of these, we'll arrive at a cave illuminated by motion-triggered lanterns heralding the creature that lies ahead. Lampmaster is the final boss of Act 1 and is easily the most weirdly grotesque Nevron thus far. A mass of writhing arms surrounded by floating lanterns and a huge sword used for sweeping attacks. This is a tough two-stage fight underscored by an epic boss track which will ensure we're ready for the far tougher Act 2. But once it's finally down and Esquie's special rock recovered, we're ready to cross the sea to the Paintress. As Lune and Sciel jump down onto Esquie's back, Gustave and Maelle spare a moment of celebration, searching around for rocks to throw, just as they did back in Lumière and their camp. Things are finally starting to look up, and with the Lumina Converter and Curator's upgrades, maybe these 4 survivors actually will succeed in taking down the Paintress all by themselves. Finally, Gustave has his rock and is ready for his celebratory throw.
Well, you know, like I always say, it's not about the rock. It's more about
Gustave.
Run.
Fuck no. No way is Gustave gonna die. He's like the main character, the expeditioner whose journey we followed completely up to this point, who was going to defeat the Paintress and avenge Sophie and the others, who was going to log everything in that journal for his apprentices to read. Surely this isn't the end for Gustave, right?
Run. Please run.
Come on, Gustave. I mean, you promised Maelle that you'd run as soon as you saw a strand of white hair. But as Gustave turns to face the white-haired man, hoping at least for some sort of answer, it's clear that this is his final stand. Try as we might, we can't even drop his health bar by a pixel. Lampmaster once again then appears, waylaying the others, and as an overcharged strike causes Gustave's arm to fall to the ground, there's only one thing left for him to say.
for those who come after. Right?
No. You promised!
As Gustave lays lifeless on the floor, the white-haired man provides nothing but cryptic excuses before sending Maelle into another trance-like state in which a man and a woman appear to be arguing over her. The woman angered by her presence, but the man more sympathetic, though ultimately this sequence just opens more questions.
This won't make sense to you now. But we both want what's best for our families. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, but I did try to warn you.
Saved again at the final moment, Maelle finally comes face to face with the other stranger from her dreams. The other, younger, white-haired man, who, looking back now to Dark Shores, was the one who Gustave blurringly saw save Maelle on the beach, who must have therefore also taken her to the manor and left the mysterious message. Evidently already acquainted with the white-haired man, the two argue between themselves and over the masked girl, Alicia, who's watching all of this from above. Helping Maelle up, the stranger sends her back to Lune and Sciel.
So that's it. You've set us down this path. But are you ready for the consequences?
She'll never paint again.
With a whole new world of questions opened, and the man we thought would be the ultimate hero of this expedition now tragically dead, Maelle and the others mourn back at camp. As Esquie comforts Maelle with a hug, Lune retreats into mission protocol, assuming now that only Expedition 32 have a hope of defeating the Paintress, whilst Sciel simply tries to comfort. Once all are asleep, the camp is visited by the stranger from earlier, returning Gustave's arm and, crucially, his Lumina Converter. Of course, the three have questions, which the man appears forthcoming with answering, explaining that he was part of Expedition 0, 67 years ago, that some among his company stopped aging and don't gamage, like him and the white-haired man, whom he tells us is named Renoir, Expedition 0's original commander. Renoir believes his immortality to come from the Paintress, so killing her would end his life too. Renoir therefore kills expeditioners to preserve his own immortality. But this stranger is tired of watching everyone around him perish, and so offers to aid us in killing the Paintress, revealing then to be the immortal friend mentioned earlier by Noco and Esquie.
Verso.
Heading into Act 2, things immediately feel strange. Our de facto expedition leader, now dead, around camp we play Heron as Verso, who mechanically fills the spot that Gustave had, inheriting his weaponry. With years of knowledge about the continent, Verso will also be our main source of information and guide from now on as well. Reuniting with Esquie, it's clear the two are close enough friends that they can say pretty much whatever they want to each other.
Mon ami! You've put on a lot of weight.
And from here onwards, we'll unlock camp interactions with each character, a means for Verso to build stronger bonds with the rest of the party, eventually helping them to tap into very specialist attacks. Lune, of course, is the one full of questions, establishing Verso's true age to be about 100, but frozen to look early 30s since the fracture. But as Maelle throws stones alone the next morning, it's clear that the tone of the expedition has been fundamentally shifted. With Esquie's new ability to swim, the world opens a lot more here, with side content now available in abundance. But for now, let's press ahead with the main objective. We still have a lot of questions, with most of the answers lying ahead, leading us to the forgotten battlefield. Though Expedition 33 was relatively small, even before we left Lumière, that comes from years of attrition. In the past, expeditions could comprise of entire armies stocked with specialist equipment, airships, cars, even Ferris wheels, and as we'll see here, siege engines. Intending to transport a full-scale army to the foot of the Monolith, this battlefield is the gravesite of Expedition 57, whose defeat mostly came at the hands of one very large, very powerful Nevrons. On the other side lays a tranquil haven where we can bury Gustave, but before it, a host of new Nevrons. The Chalier is a knightly looking thing, possibly named as it sounds close to Chevalier, though that one's already taken by another Nevron that we'll meet later. This is where Verso also introduces us to gradient counters, a means of deflecting specialist enemy moves, which lore-wise seem to involve a more heavy channeling of chroma. Gameplay-wise, it's just a fun new layer to combat. We'll face plenty of Chaliers across this region, along with the Ramasseur, French for collector or gatherer, which fits with the rucksack on its back. Wandering through this place, bearing witness to the full-scale magnitude of this failed assault, we'll also see corpses of the continent's second friendly creature. Larger than Gestrals and being made of stone rather than wood, the Grandis were a people who fought alongside Lumière in this battle. We'll get to know them more later. Also, this place introduces us to a new fading spirit. Not the boy this time, but a woman who interestingly will only choose to speak with Maelle. And again, this is somebody that seems to know her, asking if she's sufficiently recovered and whether she can be of help. But when Maelle replies, still very confused, she's simply dismissed, and this spirit, like the boy, will refuse to speak anymore. The battlefield can then also tell us the fates of two more expeditions, 41, who decided to try and gamify things, funny that, by competing against each other for Nevron kills, knowing they had little hope of defeating the Paintress herself, and that they could at least make the world safer by reducing the number of Nevrons in it, a pursuit that it'll later become clear was kind of pointless. Then there's 57, the leaders of this great siege who ultimately lost hope, looking at their engines in comparison to the scale of the Monolith, thinking what could they possibly do against it, their efforts ending at this large bridge. Here, the sheer magnitude of death begins to weigh on Maelle as she asks Verso how he can possibly bear a lifetime of immortality as everybody else around him dies. This distraction almost proves fatal, as the Nevron that killed Expedition 57 epically strikes down from above, sending us all cascading into the ravine. Due Least is an awesomely designed Nevron with some clear Souls inspiration behind it. Time to see if a team with upgraded weapons and a Lumina converter can prove more successful than an entirely decked out army, in a two-stage boss fight that is probably the most freaking epic display of combat thus far.
Well, turns out this Nevron wasn't that
strong, but you did well. You learn fast.
Is that the case though? Or is Expedition 33 just a lot more powerful than those who came before? With that done, Maelle and the others find a place to bury Gustave, laying his prosthetic arm atop a mound of white and red petals, matching the wreaths worn back in Lumière during the Gamache. Clearly, this isn't the first time Verso has buried people in this spot, as he stares at headstones marked with a 0.
Thanks for being my family. In the next life.
After a tearful farewell to Gustave, it's time again to make camp. That evening, Verso explains our next objective.
We head north to Monoco station.
Why there?
To recruit my oldest friend. We'll need the extra firepower, because our next goal will be to take down the Paintress heart.
The Paintress, it turns out, is not just far away, she's protected by a magical chroma barrier, something that no expeditioner, according to Verso, can pass through without being destroyed. The only way to weaken it is by destroying the Paintress's heart in Old Lumière, the place where the city used to be on the continent. In fact, if we draw a line between Old Lumière and the current one, it passes through several of the locations where we've seen Lumière ruins, almost as though a piece of Lumière had literally been picked up and moved down to the far south, as parts of it fell off in the process, scattering a line of ruins across the continent.
I've travelled with many expeditions. I was with the 58th when we found Old Lumière. But Renoir erased them before we could get further.
We'll learn more about 58 shortly, but first, let's recruit our 5th and final member to the expedition at Monoco Station. Not a human this time, but a Gestral. Arriving here, we can see it's literally a train station, a remnant of the way that the continent used to be interconnected.
Is it true before the fracture, Lumière had trains running throughout the continent?
Always running late, but running. Yes.
Further inside, we'll meet our first living Grandis, the guardsmen of this place. Grandis could be a colloquial French term for grown-up. They've certainly got deeper, more mature voices than the Gestrals, and the owl-looking masks that serve as their faces could be a nod to the idea of owls being old and wise. Whilst Gestrals enjoy battling physically, Grandis' competition comes in the form of philosophical debates, though they do still have odd tendencies, like a historian keeping careful records all in its mind, saying if anyone forgets their history, that it can simply tell them, and if we question what happens if it forgets, the Grandis goes into a ponder. But generally, their society is more grown up and civilized than that of the Gestrals, save perhaps for one, Monoco.
Slow as ever.
Your reflexes remain sharp as ever. I approve.
Yeah, Monoco is a Gestral that talks like a human, something that Verso claims to have spent a portion of his immortality teaching Monoco to do, resulting in him sounding and behaving a lot more grown up for the most part, but still with classic Gestral tendencies.
Ladies, could I interest you in a duel?
Definitely a Gestral.
Immediately, we learn Monoco has a very cool, unique ability.
Okay. He can turn into a Nevron.
Yep, for reasons that are never fully explained, though I do have a theory that we'll return to later, if Monoco harvests the foot of any Nevron, he will thereafter be able to transform into it. He also covets the feat with a strange degree of obsession.
What lovely feet.
Leaving the station, Monoco will demonstrate the skill by having us fight a new ice-based Nevron called a Stalact, a word I'm guessing derived from stalactite, the shape that icicles form into. This is also where we learn gradient attacks, immensely powerful strikes charged during a fight, which can be performed alongside regular ones, and are going to be ever more crucial as we come on to tougher bosses. Pleasantries exchanged, Verso asks Monoco to join the party.
We're heading for Old Lumière.
Okay, bye.
Hey, come on. Hey. Hey, look. I know we failed before, but look, you doofus. Don't you recognize her?
Of course I do.
Then you know what that means. This is our shot. It might be our only shot.
This is your only shot. Out of the question. I will never join you again.
There will be a lot of fighting, though.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's true.
There will be a lot of fighting.
Exactly.
Count me in then.
Good.
Good. Good. Good. Yes, good.
Fun fact, that whole segment was improv'd by the developers, though it's also clear here that Verso knows more about Maelle than he's letting on, and so now too does Monoco. Now a party of 5, we head for Old Lumière, along with Noco, who is kind of Monoco's son?
As a responsible parent, this is a superb idea. Let us go to Old Lumière.
Back at camp, we'll learn through Lune some more about Verso's past. After the fracture and Expedition Zero, he actually did return for a time to Lumière, helping to rebuild food supplies and, with the help of his father, the dome that protects the entire city. In fact, back in Lumière, the statues at the dock, in hindsight, are kind of reminiscent of Verso, perhaps built in his honor in the early days. But when asked why he finally left and didn't return, he'll simply say that people didn't trust him, betraying him whilst out on expedition, believing Verso to have more answers than he did. Ever since then, he's understandably never returned to civilization. To be fair though, later that same night, he does also use his immortality to do this.
Hi. I'm a pair of legs that can talk.
Verso?
We're both Verso.
A light moment, but one that verifies Verso's level of immortality. He doesn't age, and literally cannot die no matter what. It's not just a case that he's simply been careful this whole time. The next day, we head to Old Lumière. Appearing like a darkened, ghostly shadow of the Lumière we know, this place was clearly the site of a great ancient battle. Golden swords adorn the horizon, with one plunged into the head of some huge titan. If the Forgotten Battlefield was the resting place of a large, failed expedition, Old Lumière was clearly the site of something much grander. But with buildings immediately blocking our way, Monoco's stalactite form clears it with a punch a little too powerful. Now separated, Lune and Sciel find themselves alone with an upset Monoco.
Sorry, I fucked up. I just wanted to show off.
In the ruins of Old Lumière, we'll face our next type of Nevrons, Chevaliers, French for female knights, with the same classic Nevron sticklegs. We'll also learn a little more about the continent's history.
So, Monoco, what was life like before the fracture?
The world was smaller and cozier, livelier. There were many more of us Gestrals back then. The fracture tore our villages apart. Only a fraction of a fraction survived. Our forests are filled with Gestrals awaiting rebirth.
So the world was smaller could just be taken to mean more interconnected, which would be true. We know there were trains back then. But Monoco also mentions Gestrals awaiting rebirth, implying that for them, death is not necessarily the end. Further into Old Lumière, the group will encounter a third, this time gold-tinted spirit, taking the form of a man in a top hat. Standing in front of the dead giant, he'll explain that he has a lot of time nowadays to sit and think, before telling us a little about the woman who created the Nevrons. Her dream had been to collect all the fables from around the world, curating and bringing each to life in some sort of workshop, but with a near endless amount out there to collect, she lamented the fact it would be impossible to collect them all, proving to this man that her dream was in fact out of reach. All very cryptic at this point, we have no idea who this spirit is or what he's really talking about, but let's just keep his words in the back of our mind for now. After a while, we'll also find another of Esquie's stones, something that'll come in handy later, with Lune and Sciel then agreeing that neither fully trusts Verso, feeling he's hiding something. The same attitude people had towards him when he was originally betrayed 67 years ago. When asking Monoco how he knows Verso, the Gestral doesn't exactly give a straight answer either.
I don't really remember. I feel like I've always known Verso.
I mean, surely you'd have a little more info to give than that. Alas, by this point, the group are face to face with the colossal dead giant, who again, Monoco can provide no context on. Perhaps the nearby journal of Expedition 58 will prove a little more insightful.
An axon. Interesting. Verso is...
Is this true?
Maelle's with him.
We need to go. Now!
Left on a cliffhanger, it's clear that Verso has been lying about something. Switching back to him, Maelle, and Noco now, we'll proceed through old Lumière from a different direction, where an item we hopefully gathered in the prologue can finally prove useful. In this tunnel is a sealed door, which by some extraordinary stroke of luck can be opened by the old key that Gustave acquired the night before the expedition. Inside, there's a journal, not from an expedition this time, but dating all the way back to the time of the fracture, giving insight into the sheer level of hopelessness the survivors trapped in old Lumière felt after half their city vanished across the sea, revealing that they too sent a force of survivors to the Monolith, but that it left those who remained even more susceptible to Nevron attacks. In the end, all these people could do was hide, slowly burn through their rations, and wait for their inevitable demise. A while later, Verso vanishes, and Maelle finds herself alone outside of a large manor, the only place with its buildings and grounds still intact. The door swings open as Maelle approaches alone, and inside is a ghostly woman, similar in appearance to the curator. A moment later, Verso reappears.
I knew you'd open the door for her.
This was Verso's plan. Leaving Maelle alone, he knew this manor would be opened if she approached it by herself. But before he can charge in, Renoir easily pushes Verso back, and the door once again closes.
How many times must you hurt our family?
Verso, move. I'm gonna fucking kill him.
You haven't told her the truth. Have you, son?
Renoir is Verso's father, something that Expedition 58 were also privy to, which Lune read in their journal.
Were you planning on sharing that this man, the man who murdered our team, is your father?
Verso has been caught in a lie, but given the situation they're now in, explanations will have to wait until later.
I'd really like for you all to survive this.
Another epic boss fight later, Renoir throws a huge bolt of energy towards the group, and tragically, the only person killed by the blast is their youngest companion, Noco, the little child Gestral, Monoco's own son, who now lays limp in his arms. Though remember here that Monoco said Gestrals can be reborn, something that Maelle wasn't present to hear. So furious that this man keeps taking away the people she loves, Maelle turns back towards Renoir, before Verso makes another mistake.
Why can't you accept who you are?
He called Maelle Alicia. The question is, why? As he does, time freezes, the world turns black and white, and the Alicia we know steps out from the manor, standing face to face with Maelle and removing her mask, revealing a burned, scarred face underneath. Taking Maelle's hand, the manor behind sets ablaze as a man inside starts screaming.
What is that? Will you tell me your name?
But Alicia simply retreats into the burning manor as it vanishes, taking the heart of the Paintress and our only hope of reaching her along with it. With our plan thwarted, Verso has a lot to answer for. He deliberately kept a crucial piece of info from the group and first attempts to deflect with excuses.
I don't think of him as my father anymore.
Still, why didn't you just tell us?
Because it's private. And it's painful, and it's none of your business. I cut ties with him decades ago.
Lying by omission is still lying.
I've told you everything you need to know.
I'd rather make that determination for myself.
I think we can all understand where each other's coming from, right?
I mean, yeah, but surely it would have been better to air this out in the open in a controlled and calm way, where the group could process and discuss it away from one of the deadliest foes on the continent. But for his own reasons, Verso chose to omit the truth, and in doing so, mask it with a lie. Perhaps if he hadn't, Noco would still be alive. Luckily, we know that Gestrals can be brought back, but it's actually not quite that simple or convenient.
Can you bring Noco back?
Partially. We can bring Noco back to life. But not all of Noco will return. It will be a different Noco. The one you knew is gone.
On to the third matter of the evening, how to reach the monolith without the Paintress's heart. Luckily, Verso's parentage wasn't the only piece of key information kept in Journal 58. The Axons are insanely powerful beings of pure chroma, much larger and far deadlier than Nevrons, with the dead giant in Old Lumière being just one of the 4. If we could get hold of the hearts of 2 others, they could be forged into a weapon powerful enough to break the barrier. And it seems Expedition 58 were also aware of the Curator, our mysterious weaponsmith, and understood that he would be able to forge these Axon hearts into the weapon we need. He seems to confirm this. But Verso is far more against the idea, explaining he's tried and failed in the past, believing it to be impossible. Except, of course, it's not. Somebody, perhaps a ridiculously powerful being, but nonetheless something, proved that Axons could die when it killed the one in Old Lumière. And with no other choice at this point, we will have to do the same. Twice. Of the 3 remaining, only 2 are still reachable on separate islands south of the monolith. But first, Verso and Maelle share some important discussions. Maelle explaining that she never fitted in back in Lumière and has felt out of place her whole life. Verso, in kind, shares that he's never quite had the life he wanted. He was obsessed with piano as a kid and might have pursued it further had the world been more kind. He'll also confirm that Alicia is indeed his sister and that her scarring comes from being trapped in a fire, taking her right eye and voice too. Finally, when talking with Esquie, we'll learn a little more about the turtle, Francois.
He's not grumpy. He's just sad. He misses Claire. Enfant used to be all wee, but now he's all ooh. Back in the day, when there was nothing in the world except the 4 of us flying around on adventures. Centuries go by without your best friends. That's gonna make you go.
Now, Esquie may talk kind of cryptically, but it's clear from this that Francois had a friend called Claire who disappeared centuries ago, suggesting both Francois and Esquie have been around long before the fracture, and once travelled this world in a group of 4 with Claire and somebody else. But that's all we'll learn for now. Thanks to another of Esquie's stones, he can now swim through coral barriers, opening the paths to both Axon Islands. But much as Verso has been helpful to the expedition, it seems sensible from here to verify much of what he says. Is there really a barrier protecting the monolith? Well, heading there we can see for certain. And when Lune's hand begins to gamage the moment she reaches out, it's clear that yes, the barrier does exist. On a nearby island, Expedition 40 learned this the hard way, making it this far thanks to the use of gliders, with 2 of their party flying straight into this barrier, immediately gamaging away as they did. Clearly, yeah, we'll need to deal with the Axons first. And because we're hardcore, let's start with the tougher of the 2 at the Temple of Sirène, a place completely different from anywhere else we've been before.
This kind of place never existed before the fracture.
Looking below, the expedition is immediately hit by the beautiful melody of the dancing Sirène, a gargantuan being surrounded by an entourage of smaller dancing Nevrons. These are appropriately called ballets, matching her design looking like miniature versions and dragging each party member into a trance-like state of ecstasy, save for Monoco, with Gestrals perhaps being less affected by her allure.
Don't look at her for too long or you'll go insane. I've seen people jumping off a cliff just from looking at her.
That would be in reference to Expedition 67, who we can thank for blasting the holes in this place and opening a path down to Sirène before her emotional pull overpowered them. 12 years later, Expedition 55 didn't fare much better, a group whose tactic was to fight Nevrons with music, which was able to enhance their Pictos. But Sirène and her Nevrons proved different to any of those on the continent, unreactive to the music of 55, continuing simply to dance to their own. Eventually, 55 tried drums against them instead, which appeared not to go so well. The next Nevron here is a more woven, eldritch-looking thing called chorale, which is French for choir. Why? Well, note that these white things are identical to the faces on the ballets, and it's pretty clear that this is a writhing mass of woven faces. So yeah, choir disturbingly makes sense. Near Sirène's base will again be the fading man from Old Lumière, back to impart a little more crypticism that'll make a lot more sense later, this time questioning whether it's truly possible to know somebody else, implying that despite his efforts, he missed important details in somebody close to him, and now it's proven costly. Just past him Swim will be the first Bénécieux Nevron, a French term for one who blesses, and this thing has a basin of magical-looking fluid for a head, perhaps relating to blessing people with holy water. After that will be a unique Nevron called Tisseur, French for weaver, spending an eternity weaving fabric to be used by Sirène. So engrossed in this activity, in fact, that we have to deliberately attack it, otherwise it'll just stay non-hostile. Though taking it down will grant us a Pictos for charm immunity, which will be crucial when fighting Sirène. Following that, we'll face Glissando, a giant snake-like creature wrapped in linens with a similar ceramic face. Glissando is a musical term meaning to slide up or down, which has a double meaning in the fact that sliding is also what a snake does. Finally reaching Sirène herself, Maelle will again be struck with a sense of familiarity.
I swear I've seen this dance before.
As we approach, Sirène hits the team with a vision of whatever they desire the most. Lune's parents, lost in Expedition 46, Gustave, of course, for Maelle, and for Sciel, her husband Pierre. A man killed not by the Gamage, but rather in an accident, seen now holding a baby. A vision she'll explain in more detail later. Even Monoco, at this point, sees Noco alive and well, but the next moment, each coveted illusion is gone, with Sirène now ready to fight. She can summon each Nevron native to this place, making the battle a difficult dance of many participants. But the moment she's defeated, Sirène strikes the party with one last overwhelming wave of despair. As everyone cowers in sheer anguish, the only one capable of resisting is Lune. Perhaps thanks to her ability to focus on the mission above everything, or maybe due to her innate curiosity about the world. After all, Sirène is also known as she who plays with wonder. Whatever the case, Lune is lifted towards the face of the Axon, and with an almighty blast, Sirène is slain, leaving behind a weave of fabric which the curator will only accept from Maelle.
That was... I saw... Renoir.
I used to see him in my nightmares too. It can be quite traumatizing.
Clearly, there's some deeper connection between the curator and Renoir, but Verso has deflected from it for now, ensuring to discuss something completely different with her later that evening, like his deeply seated passion for music and desire to play piano at the concert hall if given the life of his dreams. He and Maelle then spend the evening playing in this beautiful scene beneath the monolith.
What song was that? I feel like I know it.
Yes, an old song I used to play to my sister.
Maelle has deja vu about a song that Alicia used to hear. Perhaps we'll learn more after we defeat the second Axon, Visage. Contrasting the more eloquent Sirène, Visage, or He Who Guards Truth with Lies, is a mass of masks with varying expressions, each conveying a different emotion and heralded by an equally mask-clad being called the Mask Keeper.
Oh, I'm harmless. You don't need those.
Well, if you're harmless, then these weapons will stay harmless too.
Touché.
We're then invited simply to venture straight up to Visage, or to explore the masks found in the other side chambers. A bizarre level of openness for one that's presumably our enemy. So heading down each of the three side paths first, we'll be faced with three separate masks, each further weakening the Axon itself, making the final fight significantly easier. These are the green-tinted Joy, or Joviality, blue Sadness, or Sorrow, and red Seething Anger. Also, down these paths, as usual, will be hosts of new Nevrons. The Bouchelier is an old French term for butcher, though here it might be a combination of bouche, meaning mouth, and bouclier, shield. So, you know, mouth shield, which is what it's holding. There's also the Chapelier, which uses the same shield for hovering, and is the French word for hatter. No further explanation needed there. Following that is the much creepier Contortioniste. This may in fact be the creepiest Nevron in the game for me, with its name being pretty self-explanatory even in English. Contortioniste moves in a strange and disturbing way, even when meant to be stationary, as we select our moves. Its face is eyeless, but look just below its neck and you'll see its actual eye. The Moissonneuse is a more upright human version of Contortioniste, still with the clicky head movements, but a name this time meaning Reaper or Harvester. There's also a new entrance to the manor in this place, leading specifically to a bedroom containing a grand piano, and a bed with... hold on, is that a cuddly toy version of Esquie, along with an actual wooden Gestral figure? Okay, that's interesting, as is the anonymous journal entry left here.
Art
can be a window, and art can be a mirror. And great art is both. Son, you'll never be a true artist if there's always a mask between you and the viewer, especially when the viewer is you.
At least the journal is marked unknown, but that's clearly the voice of Renoir, lecturing his son, which we know to be Verso, on the creation of true, transparent artwork, implying Verso himself to also be somebody who hides truth behind a mask, something we've seen him do already by withholding information. But much as this appears to be Renoir talking about Verso, something feels off about it, especially the journal being marked unknown rather than just Renoir. Now, Visages Island was also visited by Expedition 69, who again dedicated their lives simply to installing climbing handholds, not trying nor hoping to defeat the Paintress, just laying the trail and providing a major navigational advantage for all those who come after, seeking no glory nor even survival, only caring about the long-term success of the mission. We certainly take for granted the foundational building blocks laid by previous expeditions, and few embody that expeditioner spirit more so than 69. Unfortunately for Expedition 39, that wouldn't be the case. They came here too to face Visage, but were overwhelmed by his sadness mask, noting too the creepiness of the Nevrons in this place, and suggesting that they don't actually want to kill expeditioners. The last thing this guy thought to try was hiding behind a mask of his own. Defeating all 3 Visage masks before heading to the Axon itself then, will for the 3rd time come across the Fading Man, always seeming to appear around Axons, interestingly, with his words this time expressing pure grief. I would have traded my years for his. His life was cut short. He had so much more to do, to experience. This senseless war. Why? To what end? Lives shattered for what? He was innocent. Innocent. It was the folly of his elders, but he paid the price for our hubris. I would have traded my years for his. This place, this Axon, they're all part of his story. So, this Axon seems tied to somebody who died, somebody the Fading Man cared for deeply.
Monoco, what does that mean? He who guards truth with lies?
Exactly what it sounds like.
Guard as in protect? Or guard as in control?
Yes.
So somebody who hides truths in order to twist things in his favour, whilst at the same time keeping those who'd be harmed by said truths safe. It sounds a lot like somebody we know. The Axon itself is a multifaceted stone Goliath that attacks with a selection of different emotions, applying different debuffs to the party via a mirror. But once defeated, this thing proves to have been just another lie.
People want so badly to know what's behind the mask. Front, back, recto, verso. Great art is both window and mirror. Whether it's your mask or theirs.
The Mask Keeper is the real Axon, but notice how closely it reiterates the words from that journal that we found just back in the manor, about art being both window and mirror. It sounds as though this bedroom wasn't just on Visages Island by coincidence. It's clearly connected to the Axon. Defeating the Mask Keeper, he, like Sirène, unleashes one final burst of near unstoppable power.
We all need masks.
I love that they just bounce off Monoco's face. Although the real hero of this battle is Sciel, who of all the people in the group remains the most unapologetically herself, not needing to hide behind a visage of any kind.
This mask can't hurt me. Because it is me.
As the second Axon lies defeated, Verso will mutter something that right now doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
No, it's Verso, wasn't it? Renoir.
Okay, there's no question as to the similarities between Visage and Verso, he who hides truth with lies and has continually kept things from the group, but what's curious is why Verso is choosing to say that was Verso, rather than that was me. But all will be revealed later. Now, with both Axon artifacts, the Curator will fashion Maelle a special sword called the Barrier Breaker. Against all odds, and for the first time in history that they know of, an expedition has the power and equipment to face and hopefully defeat the Paintress. That night, before we leave for the Monolith though, Alicia will reappear at camp, handing her brother, Verso, a letter. And in a sweet moment, Verso then proves himself actually quite different from Visage.
My beautiful sister doesn't need this ugly mask.
Of course, with Alicia here, Renoir isn't too far behind, asking Verso if he really is truly ready to die. Something that will inevitably happen if we defeat the Paintress and strip away his immortality.
May everything be decided before their very eyes, between the bars of their prison,
in the shadow of the Monolith.
Returning to the Monolith barrier, Maelle will indeed successfully shatter it, leaving the way open to its base where the giant figure of the Paintress sits, appearing to sob on the floor. As we approach, nobody's attacks seem to have any effect, the Paintress herself completely unreactive. Realizing this, Maelle is once again cast into a black and white vision, causing her, Lune and Sciel to burn before they're transported inside the Monolith itself. A huge black and gold structure adorned with giant canvas frames and the flag of Expedition 70. Looks like we aren't the first, after all, to reach the Monolith. Now inside, Maelle can sense the real Paintress above us, our challenge now to fight our way through the giant structure. Heading through, you may begin to find this place familiar. With many Nevrons we've already faced cropping up in similar environments, it's clear that the Monolith is a microcosm for the wider continent, with segments all very reminiscent of the journey we've taken thus far, but tainted with black and gold chroma. It also sheds some light on who the Paintress was, with flashback-type visions across each section depicting her life presumably before all of this, starting with her simply painting in the Tainted Meadows. At the end of the first region will be a new, very tough Nevron whose name may sound familiar. Clair makes up one of the two Nevron halves aptly named Clair and Obscur, which in French translates to light and dark, a term also referred to as chiaroscuro, which is a painting technique that involves creating stark contrasts with light and dark colours. Clair, Obscur, and the stronger combined version Clair Obscur fittingly using light and dark based attacks. If I were to guess, I'd say whoever created them was inspired by the meta idea to create art out of artistic techniques. As for the dramatic split down the middle, well, that seems to be a visual representation of internal duality and conflict, which is a central theme to the game in ways we can't fully even explore just yet, but that we will come back to after reaching the top of the Monolith. After Tainted Meadows comes Tainted Waters, this time showing us that the Paintress has children, 3 of them, and she taught each to paint just like her. Then, on the Tainted Cliffs, we learn that the Paintress also has a husband, one whom she appears to be fighting with in this memory. Then onto the Tainted Battlefield, where another manor entrance can be found, this one leading to its rooftop conservatory and the journal of a woman called Aline, locked in a state of mourning at the loss of somebody, and saying she's unable to face Alicia without her own pain then cutting even deeper. So perhaps Aline is Alicia's mother? Next, we'll pass through a tainted version of Frozen Hearts, a mountain near Monoco station that we'll return to and explore later, but heading through here, the Paintress can be seen scolding her daughter. Now, you might put 2 and 2 together as to who exactly that is here, but let's continue upwards for now. These snowy mountains are also home to the Nevrons Pèlerin and Danseuse, with the first meaning pilgrim, having the hat match, and Danseuse being a female ballet dancer, performing some awesome looking dance-based combos. Beyond them is the Gargant, a colossal ice structure with the name a nod to its gargantuan size. After that will be a train station where once again stands the faceless boy, claiming that this is his station, ready to take us to Lumière, his hometown, giving a little more insight to his origins, as well as learning that the train was a gift from his mother, knowing just how much he loves them. Quite the gift for someone to give a young child. Finally, we find ourselves in a ruined, tainted recreation of Lumière, with the flag of Expedition 0 Zero already planted. Does that mean that Verso has been here before? In the next Paintress memory, she stands over her son, teaching him to play piano. Actually, that seems to be the same boy we were just talking to about trains. Wouldn't it make sense that the Paintress, of all people, would be able to gift that to her son, a boy passionate about both trains and piano?
Verso? You okay?
Yeah, fine. Let's keep moving. We're almost at the top.
Towards the back of Tainted Lumière, we'll also find the last stand of Expedition 70, a group who, maybe aside from Zero, got further than any other expedition. Much like 69 that came the year after, 70's goal was simply to lay the path for those who come after, installing all of the long-distance grapple points that have enabled us to traverse vast spaces so easily, not just in the Monolith, but all over the continent. Though their goal may never have been to face the Paintress themselves, they ironically came closer than all those who came after, until now, falling short just outside to a powerful Nevron. Thanks to them though, we can finish the job, reaching a huge chamber at the back of Lumière where we see the Paintress' final memory, her and her husband standing hand in hand. But before we can proceed, unsurprisingly at this point, Renoir stands as the final obstacle, who perhaps now, seeing how far we've actually come, how close we are to victory, first tries to reason with his son, hoping to convince Verso not to kill the Paintress at all.
We're taking her down.
She's not the only one who grieves. The pain of losing you, she made me inherited. Punishment, perhaps, for not being there when it mattered. I refuse to lose my son.
That son was a stranger.
But you're not. You're not.
You lost me years ago, and I lost you.
So you leave us no choice. Tell me, how are you different from her in doing this?
I'm tired.
So trust me. We are your family.
Family is complicated.
But unsuccessful in his persuasion, Renoir is left with no other choice.
If saving you means losing you, then so be it.
We only need to incapacitate him.
We'll find a way to kill him.
Our toughest battle thus far ensues, underscored by one of the most awesome boss tracks of the entire game, and that is saying a lot. This time, Renoir does not pull his punches, and once on the back foot, goes to even greater lengths.
Your sister deserves more.
Summoning a chromatic lion to aid him, this represents how far Renoir will go to protect his family, with the lion being the ultimate natural predator of its pack. But even then, Expedition 33 proves more powerful. In my game, Maelle was the last one standing to administer the final blow, which is brilliantly poetic, given her particular vendetta against Renoir. But with another flurry of petals, the Paintress restoring his power, Renoir still isn't done.
It's not her. It's your sister, your mother, me. We are your family. He would condemn us all to die for what? Who do you really save with your sacrifice?
Your sister and your mother?
You're too drunk on your own illusions to understand.
Then let us celebrate the second destruction of the Descendre family!
But before the fighting can continue, Renoir is stopped by our mysterious curator, whom he appears actually to be familiar with already.
At long last, we meet. This is all you have left of your son. Destroying it won't bring your wife back. It will only destroy the last tie you have to each other.
Using Maelle for some reason, she and the curator finally end Renoir's existence in a way eerily reminiscent of the Gamage, even with the same coloured petals.
I love them too.
But Lune, ever the analyst of the group, doesn't quite understand how Maelle has that power.
Hey, how did you do that?
Not sure. The curator felt it.
With little time to ponder on this, or the meaning of Renoir's words, all the expedition can focus on now is defeating the Paintress, fulfilling the work of all the expeditions who came before and saving Lumière from its slow annihilation. Reaching the top, we'll find her in her scaled down form reminiscent of the curator, with Lune then realizing she must be his wife.
You've come back, but the fire. Are you really here? Or is he? Oh, is he playing tricks again? Alicia.
Alicia?
Your face.
My face? What about my face? Are you going to burn it again?
Alicia's your daughter.
And Maelle reminds you of her. The daughter you lost. Come along. Let's go home.
Yes. You need to go home.
This is another trick. She's not Alicia. You are not my Verso.
No. Verso's dead.
No. You are his creations, not mine. You will not take this canvas from me.
This is what we created the expeditions for.
Tomorrow comes.
As we're launched into yet another epic fight, desperately parrying the Paintress's moves, we'll no doubt be left wondering just what the hell this all means. Who is our Verso, if the Paintress's Verso is dead? Was he who Verso referred to after we defeated Visages? Why does Maelle look so much like Alicia with an unburned face? Why does the Paintress appear to be in a state of delirium, unable to tell friend from foe? And what on earth does she mean by taking this canvas from her? As the fight goes on, the Paintress summons the giant version of herself from before, forcing Verso to reveal something else he's been keeping from the group.
Look what I found!
Oh, sorry! All aboard!
Now able to fight the Paintress in her final form, she pulls out moves going well beyond the established rules of this world. Things like, oh, I don't know, ripping reality apart.
Arrogant man. I taught him to paint, and he seeks to use my creations against me.
But despite all her godlike skill, Expedition 33 still triumph over the Paintress. But much in the way that Renoir did earlier, she too stubbornly refuses to die.
No, we're not done yet.
In this third and final round, the Paintress then does something unexpected. No longer attacking, all her moves are purely made to protect and heal us. Realizing this, before skipping turns to see if it continues, only confirms this further. In her final moments, the Paintress chooses an action not of violence, but of love. Alas, the only way to progress is to defeat her.
Why?
Rest now. Things have been better soon.
With Maelle performing another gommage-like move, without the Curator's help this time, the Paintress turns into golden petals, not red like before, recognizing in her final moments Maelle for who she really is.
Alicia.
But a moment later, she's gone. 67 years of gommages, expeditions, and ever-worsening tragedy finally over. The number on the monolith disintegrates, promising a future, finally, for Lumière.
It's done. You're free. You are all free.
Is this real?
Planting the final flag in the place of ultimate victory, we fly back to Lumière, thanks to Esquie's special new rock. On the way back, each expedition member reacts differently. Verso and Monoco seem eerily silent, Maelle is more confused than relieved, with Lune more concerned by the stack of questions left unanswered. The only one seemingly celebrating is Sciel, wondering what they'll do with the decades left ahead of them. Back at the port of Lumière, the world celebrates their return, no doubt also amazed at the sight of Esquie and Monoco, though Maelle sadly must confront both Emma and Gustave's apprentices, returning just the journal that Gustave wrote in the hope they'd one day read it. Meanwhile, Verso finds a quiet space in the dock and takes a moment to read the letter that Alicia left for him the night before we reached the monolith. A letter revealing to us, the audience, the monumental truth that this whole time has remained just out of reach.
Brother, I tire of the conflicts and deceptions that plague our family and theirs. So, I entrust you with this letter. Whether you give it to her is up to you. I'm at peace with what's to come. When the time comes, I hope you will be too. Maelle, it's a strange feeling watching you with my brother, laughing and smiling, without the scars or the memories that afflict me. Alicia, as she was meant to be, not this painted version that I am. My family, a facsimile of yours, and this world, a mirror, painted by your mother, the Paintress, to stave off her grief. Seeing your expedition through would plunge us all into the abyss. For in ridding the world of the Paintress, you'd lose the sole force standing against the one who would erase us, the one who invokes the flowers of the gommage. An act of love, for he does love her. Your father. On her monolith, she paints a warning for us all, of the few she can save as her power wanes. We all wish for our families to thrive. Your family, however, believes only one can survive. But perhaps you'll find another way. You who have lived amongst us, perhaps you differ from your father and your sister, as I differ from mine. Your mother paints life, whilst your father, death. What will you paint?
As Verso finishes the letter, containing information he already knew, a great power erupts from beneath the monoliths, and as the rest of Lumière is gommaged from existence in one fell swoop, men, women, and children alike, Sciel, Lune, everyone, we are left with just one damning realization. We got it so wrong. The Paintress was not the destruction of this world, but the only thing that could save it, slowly failing as her husband fought to bring her back to the real world, sapping her of her power. Now that she's gone, his plan to erase her creations becomes fully realized. Previously imprisoned beneath the monolith, the real Renoir is finally free to destroy Lumière, the place and the people that his wife, the Paintress Aline, spent 67 years trying to keep alive. Our savior, and we killed her for it, along with everyone else too. As Maelle is gommaged from existence, we're cast back 16 years to Monolith Year 49, starting with a dream in which Verso, trapped in the manor, dies in a fire.
You're okay.
Alicia? Good, you're awake. Come downstairs.
We awaken in the manor as Maelle, or as we realise now, Alicia, the real Alicia, the girl rendered scarred and mute by the same fire that killed her brother Verso. And this manor, whilst familiar, is not the same one we've been finding around the continent during the game. In fact, this is the first time in Clair Obscur that we find ourselves somewhere truly real. As Alicia wakes, the real Eiffel Tower sits outside her window. No longer bent and decaying like back in Lumière, this is Paris in the early 20th century, a manor owned by the Descendre family, of which Alicia, Maelle as we know her, is the youngest of 3 children. And this is the moment that everything is revealed. So a brief history, with more details to be added as the story continues to unfold, but let's start with the basics. The Descendre family is comprised of 5 members, Renoir and Aline, and their 3 children, Clair, Verso, and Alicia. Aline was the first to use their gift, an ability whose origins are never fully explained, but which allows her to paint worlds, and in doing so, bring them to life. A canvas becoming like a portal for her to cast her mind into and become a god with the power to create whatever she wanted. Aline was exceptionally skilled in this talent, and at some point was made head of the Painters' Council, so presumably this world has more of these magical painters than just the Descendre family. But regardless of the total number, it made them incredibly rich, judging by the size of their manor. Later, Aline taught her husband Renoir to paint like she could, suggesting it's more a skill that can be taught than something one is innately born with. Together, the two created countless worlds where they could spend multiple lifetimes together. That's another aspect to Aline's form of magical painting, linking back to one of the only English songs we heard earlier in the Spring Meadows. Time exists in abundance here. 67 years can go by inside a painting, yet it may only be weeks, days, or even hours at a low estimate back in the real world. You could live out a whole lifetime in a painting and leave having barely aged outside. Renoir and Aline could have spent centuries in total as gods across different canvases. But this comes with a risk. Spending too much time in a canvas can cause a painter to lose themselves in it. The logistics of this are never fully explained, but we do know that to create and maintain a painting, its maker must divest a piece of their soul to bring everything to life. A meta-representation of a real painting, I suppose. But giving too much, spending too long inside, centuries at a time maybe, can drain the painter to the point of death. Painters need to pace themselves, still enjoying healthy doses of real life here and there without overindulging too many lifetimes at once inside a canvas. As we saw in Aline's memories, when her 3 children were born, they too were taught to paint. Clair would also develop a talent for the harp, and Verso a love of piano, the same passion shared by Verso inside the canvas, who, as we know, given his perfect life, would spend it performing piano concertos. Whether art or music though, creativity ran strong through this family, with each child's room inside the manor depicting the thing they enjoyed the most. For Clair, the eldest, that passion appears to have been sculpting. Her bedroom and adjacent workshop is full of bizarre, probably clay sculptures, creatures she would later recreate inside the canvas as Nevrons. For Verso, he preferred piano over painting, having a grand piano of his own moved into his study, along with a model train set. Indeed, Verso also, and still does, have a love of trains. As for Maelle, Alicia, her room is laden with towers of books, along with a typewriter. It seems she was far more enamored with reading and writing over painting. But being members of the Descendre family, where Aline is the head of the Painters Council, each child too had to learn to paint, creating canvas worlds of their own where they could become gods and fashion reality to their will. With Alicia, by far the youngest sibling, it's not clear how strict her parents were with her in learning to paint, but Clair and Verso both very much had to. So as a young boy, Verso created a giant canvas of his own, imparting a piece of his soul to create a magical world where the rules of what one could and couldn't do were loose at best. In this place, he brought into being Esquie, a giant recreation of his childhood stuffed toy, whilst his sister, Clair, painted one of her early attempts at sculpting, a turtle named Francois, who doesn't have any legs because, well, I think Clair struggles particularly in sculpting legs. That's perhaps why so many of the Nevrons have little stick legs. She created all these awesome things but just couldn't ever get that part right. So, earlier on, when Esquie said to Verso,
"Back in the day, when there was nothing in the world except the four of us, flying around on adventures."
It wasn't a figure of speech. He's talking about the very earliest days of this canvas, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, before Verso and Clair had created anything else. This also explains just why Esquie needs special rocks to be able to do stuff. I mean, that's exactly the kind of rule that a little kid would make up, with Esquie's personality based on the way that a kid would have somebody talk. As for Francois' strongest ice attack ever, that's probably true in the context of this world, and is the exact way a child would describe such a move. Francois was Clair's first creation in this canvas, and has understandably been sad since she left. On reflection, her Stonewave Cliffs encounter with the young boy, clearly now a remnant of Verso, hints at Clair outgrowing him. Though at the time we thought he was talking about the Paintress, he actually meant his older sister, who he spent most of his early years in this canvas with, the effects of which will show up a lot more in Act 3. But Esquie and Francois were only the first creations to exist here. Verso also created the Grandis, those fun representations of adults, and most famously, the Gestrals, whose inspiration will become clear when we enter the dining hall of the real Descendre mansion. On our left is a grand fireplace with two dogs snuggled up asleep in front of it. Their names are Noco and Monoco III. Verso based Monoco and Noco on his family dogs, with Monoco III being a key detail. This flashback is taking place years after Verso had grown up, and presumably our Monoco was named after Monoco I, or II. So it's likely a custom in this family that when one Monoco dies, Noco takes his place and the cycle continues. Then they get a new puppy and call that one Noco, and so on. In fact, the Gestral dog similarities have been there all along. They all love play fighting, toys, or just stuff. They speak to each other in a far more simplistic language, and when they die, they can be brought back, though through a process more akin to being replaced than resurrection. Monoco said that rebirthing Noco would bring back a version of him, but not the one we knew, mimicking the Descendre family's replacement of their dogs. So Gestrals are inspired by the behavior and nature of dogs, then made into the bodies of living paintbrushes. Presumably as a child, Verso looked down at the thing in his hand and decided, I'll give this some arms and legs and call it a day. Monoco specifically also has a superpower that doesn't make any sense. The ability to transform into any Nevron, provided he has one of their feet. Now, I reckon this was also inspired by their actual dog, Monoco. We can see that Clair sculpted many real-life versions of her Nevrons. Some are displayed in her bedroom, and the best in a sculpture gallery, alongside others made by Renoir. The Axons and all their Nevrons are his creations, but we'll come back to that. Now, I would imagine, what with being a dog, that Monoco may have tended to attack Clair's Nevrons, ripping and chewing off their feet. In fact, this may be a different reason why Nevron feet are so basic. Maybe she just gave up putting time into them, since Monoco always managed to break them. Either way, Verso probably found this hilarious, and decided to give his painted Monoco a similar obsession, before going further and thinking, wouldn't it be cool if Monoco could turn into any Nevron whose feet he stole? This is never explicitly confirmed in-game, but I think it makes a lot of sense. It's also clear now just why certain regions of the continent are so whimsical. The Flying Waters area doesn't make sense at all. It's comprised of SpongeBob-level physics, and yet that of course makes sense here, in a world originally created by children. Eventually though, much like Clair, Verso outgrew his childhood canvas, one day leaving it for the last time, with just that slither of his childhood soul left to maintain all the life inside. Now, another part of canvas mechanics that isn't fully explained is what exactly happens when all the painters leave the painting? Does it continue to function, with time moving at the same lightning speed as always compared to the real world, creations still going about their daily lives, or does time only run in the presence of a painter? Now, I'm going to assume, based on a large generalization given by Esquie, that a painter needs to exist in the painting for time to continue to run. Else, in the probably minimum 12 years since Verso last entered the canvas, even if 1 year here is 1 day in real time, that's going to add up to over 4,000 years. We'll try and figure out a more exact ratio for how time works in a minute, but first let's finish the history of the Descendre family. With Verso growing up, perhaps instead pursuing the piano, this canvas was left untouched for a very long time. Clair and Verso grew into their 20s, and Maelle, about 10 years younger than Verso, into her teens. As established, she would develop a love and fascination of writing much more so than painting. Perhaps as the youngest child, Aline and Renoir's strictness over her may have been looser than with Clair and Verso. Unfortunately, this led to Maelle, or rather Alicia, being in some way responsible for the worst day of the Descendre family's life. You see, the painters aren't the only faction in this world. They are, for some reason, at war with a group called the Writers, presumably a faction also capable of creating living worlds, but through writing rather than painting. Though, if we want to go really out there, we could theorize the Writers are literally the game writers, manipulating the lives of the Descendre family just as they manipulate the lives of all those inside the canvas. Though personally, I'm gonna go with option 1 and assume they're just a contrasting faction to the painters. As we've seen, growing up, Alicia focused far more on writing than painting. No doubt, a future in the Writers Guild, therefore, would have been far more attractive to her than a life stuck painting. And perhaps through that desire, the Writers manipulated her, leading to the start of a fire inside the manor, which would have led to Alicia's death were it not for the heroic sacrifice of Verso. That's the vision we see at the start of the sequence, as well as the one shown to Maelle by the painted Alicia back in old Lumière. Verso giving his life to save his younger sister on December 33rd, 1905. Alicia is still grievously wounded by the flames, but lives thanks to Verso. Also, yeah, December 33rd isn't a real date, a fact that is never addressed in-game, but could potentially add fuel to the theory that the Writers are literally the game writers, establishing their own rules without the need for them to make sense. It could also just be the case that December in this fictional Paris of painters has 2 extra days. With Verso gone, the Descendre family all grieved in different ways, with parallels perhaps to the 5 stages of grief. When we found Aline, the Paintress, at the top of the Monolith, she was still in a state of denial, unable to fully admit that Verso was dead.
But the fire. Are you really here?
Clair is anger, spending her time now fighting the Writers, and in the canvas painting the Nevrons, the most violent creatures on the continent. Alicia would have been seriously injured in the first few months, but will potentially go on later to become bargaining, whilst Renoir, out of everybody, wants his family to move on, grasping for acceptance. Though I think he becomes locked in a state of depression, left with nothing but time on his hands to wallow in his own failings. But let's look at exactly how. See, after Verso died, Aline, unable to move on, dug out the only piece of Verso the family had left, his childhood canvas. The world in which he had imparted a piece of his younger soul, and which was still home to Esquie, Francois, Monoco, the Gestrals, and the Grandis. It was into this canvas that Aline retreated, modifying the world to house more than just childish creations, adding people, harmoniously coexisting in the city of Lumière, which initially existed right in the canvas's center. Closest to most of Verso's childhood creations, she clung on to every part of him that she could. Okay, maybe Aline is bargaining as well. I think there's elements of both to her, for sure. Now, if Aline had indulged in this to a healthy degree, revisiting her son's canvas as a therapeutic way to remember him, then maybe that would have been fine. But as is clear from her journal entry found back in the manor, Aline found too much comfort here and too little back in reality. She couldn't handle her husband's opposite means of coping, Clair was distant, and Alicia's presence entirely unbearable. Aline's anger over her daughter's role in Verso's death and the guilt of perhaps wishing Alicia had died instead, proving too much to bear. Aline didn't just want to remember Verso through his canvas, she wanted a new life there, the life they should have had. So she repainted her family inside her son's canvas, all tweaked into the versions she wished they were. The Renoir we fought multiple times was Aline's painted creation, built to have the protective nature of a lion, as seen in our final fight against lost him where he was killed by the curator, the real version of Renoir destroying the fake one. Painted Clair we don't know much about right now, we'll get to her later, and Verso was probably remade as true to life as possible, Aline wanting to recapture every detail of the son she lost. His love of piano and trains, right down to the tendency of lying to get what he wants. Indeed, our Verso knew exactly what would happen if we defeated the Paintress. He led us on the hope that we were saving the world, knowing full well that our actions would destroy it. Saving his mother, yes, but also freeing him of the immortality he'd been forced to endure. Aline's most absolute rule, ensuring she never lost her family again. As for Alicia, her painted version shows clearly how little her mother thinks of her. Not even painted with colour, she bears all the scars and disabilities inflicted by the fire, but still has to cover them away with a mask. Honestly, this one's kind of messed up. Aline still wants even her painted daughter to suffer for the mistakes of the real one, yet doesn't want to constantly see that pain. She's secretly glad that Alicia is suffering, but is ashamed to admit that fact. Alicia could have been painted like Maelle, or just not at all, but this is the cruelest thing she could possibly have done. But with her painted family now complete in a painted home, Aline in her grief tried to replace her nightmare reality with this fake dream. But Renoir, the real Renoir, quite understandably didn't want to lose his wife too. Again, the rules of how long someone can spend in a canvas before dying are unclear, but whatever the case, he felt he needed to intervene. Though, once it was clear that talking wasn't enough, Renoir was faced with a choice. Let his wife die, or erase their son's canvas and all the life inside of it completely, removing the source of Aline's addiction. And that's another thing open to interpretation. Are the people inside the canvas just as real as those in the real world? Well, Verso's soul seems to think so, and after all the time spent with these characters, getting to know their lives, thoughts and dreams, is there any doubt that each of these people aren't just as real as the Descendre family? Yet Renoir's actions are understandable, a desperate attempt made to protect his family. As he and Aline fought, the battle between the two gods was the fracture. Renoir's specific target, the creations of his wife, all those living in Lumière, where Aline was living out a fantasy. So, protecting what she built, Aline picked up as much of Lumière as she could, likely in giant Paintress form, and moved it to the bottom of the canvas as far away from Renoir as possible. Then she imprisoned him beneath the monolith, as he continued to exert every ounce of his power in erasing his wife's creations. A stalemate, but one that Aline would have slowly won, as the original, more powerful painter. That was until Clair got involved. Back to Maelle in the real world, we're called into Renoir's atelier by Clair, adorned with a statue of one of his mightiest Nevrons, a creation, and the walls lined with portraits of the Axons, each representing his 4 family members. Visage was Verso, he who guards truth with lies. Sirène is of course Aline, casting illusions of the world as she wishes it to be. Paula, the dead Axon in Old Lumière, was based on Clair, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders and attempting to fight this war against the writers on her own. We'll learn a lot more about who and how Halla was defeated a little later. Finally, though it's not drawn to our attention here, Reacher was made for Alicia, which we'll face once we dive back into the canvas. Approaching Renoir and Aline, we see more clearly how exactly entering canvases works. The body stays stationary in the real world, whilst the eyes and senses are clearly infused with chroma, like entering a very vivid dream.
Our little shadow is awake.
Clair then reveals that this isn't at all the longest they've spent in a canvas, so the threat of Aline dying was never an immediate one, I don't think. Rather more a case of needing to pull her from Verso's world once it became clear she never intended to leave. Clair doesn't care too much for helping her mother, but believes her father's efforts could be better spent helping her fight the writers, which is why she did this.
Aline is more skilled than Renoir, but I've tipped the scales in his favor. I have my pets in place. She who controls chroma controls the canvas. I can't take her chroma, but I can keep it from returning to her. Yes, it's enough. It's just a matter of time. As she weakens, Renoir is able to erase her oldest creations, with the exception of her obscene fake family. She's made them immortal, but luckily, they're also quite useless.
Yes, Clair is the one who painted Nevrons, repurposing her childhood creations as monsters of the canvas, removing the chroma of the expeditioners they kill from the balance of chromatic power. You see, every painter appears to have a finite level of chroma when entering a canvas. There is an economy to how these powers work, and when we have multiple painters fighting one another, the winner is likely determined by who has the most chroma. Aline already exhausted much of hers creating the citizens of Lumière. In fact, every human inside this canvas is her creation. The accents and Nevrons related to them are Renoirs, but most Nevrons are Clairs. Now, when the gommage happens, that's actually Renoir, growing in strength to eliminate Aline's oldest creations, with the chroma that gave them life transforming into red petals. Renoir's colour, the same that emanated from the curator, empowering him to further force that number down, though no doubt some of it returns to Aline as well. The gommage ceremony involves both red and white flowers, with Aline representative of the white, though for the gommage that we witness, the petals do appear almost entirely red, perhaps hinting at how much Renoir's power had grown by this point. Why did Painted Renoir keep killing expeditioners? Well, that was to send their chroma directly back to Aline, slowing her power drain and delaying the destruction of everything, though the number still continued to tick down year by year. So, turns out that all the expeditioners dying to Nevrons on the continent were Aline's biggest power drain. New births cost her chroma, which she'd never get back from anyone killed by a Nevron. Ironically, this means the expeditions were actually accelerating Lumière's extinction, and perhaps if they'd all stayed home like some had suggested, the numbers would have ticked down more slowly, though I also can't imagine the years ticking down by halves. As things were, the system would eventually ensure Renoir's slow victory. But Claire, impatient to wait, decides that Alicia can help too. Much better for her to be aiding inside the canvas than falling prey to the writers again. Still torn apart by that guilt herself, Alicia of course agrees to help, and once inside with her voice patched up, she convinces Claire that the canvas needs hiding in the meantime.
Well reasoned. And such a clever hiding spot you've chosen. This only truly ends if you destroy the canvas. And that means stopping the final sliver of Verso's soul from painting.
Initially, Alicia has all her real memories intact, with the intention of aiding her father as a fully powered, if inexperienced paintress. But then, everything goes wrong.
Wait, that's Aline's chroma. Stay calm. Don't let it take control of you. Calm, Alicia, or it'll paint over you. What an auspicious start. Well, you're about to be reborn in this world as one of Aline's creations. Have fun.
Encapsulated by Aline's chroma, Alicia is reborn an unexpected surprise to two older parents in Lumière. Though the timing is tragic, just 3 years before their gommage, they nonetheless named her Maelle, meaning princess. Aptly fitting, actually.
Oh, my darling girl. We have precious little time together. You'll never know us. But I want you to know that you are loved. I want you to know you're not alone. You will always be the beautiful child I held in my arms. You will smile the brightest smile. You will cry iridescent tears. You will know love. And you will know pain. You will know loss all too well. Because we live in an unforgiving world. But you are strong. And you will survive. You will struggle, and you will learn. You'll find people to call your own, and you will shine as their guiding light. For you will change the world, and the people around you. You'll forever be our princess.
As we know, Maelle was later raised by Gustave, and losing him as well as Verso means Maelle has now faced the same loss both outside the canvas and in. We'll start Act 3 in a second, but now, armed with a little more info, let's try to answer how exactly time works. Now again, there's never a defined ratio for how time on the canvas translates to time outside of it, that we can get within an accurate range. This flashback takes place in the real-world equivalent of Monolith Year 49, minutes before the real Alicia enters the canvas and becomes Maelle. Now let's start with the notion that 1 minute in the real world equals 1 year inside the canvas. Were that the case, then here, the fraction fracture would have happened just 51 minutes ago, and in the 10 minutes minimum from the Monolith Year 49 title card to Alicia entering the canvas, another 10 years at least would have passed. That clearly isn't the case. We're still in Monolith Year 49 when entering the canvas, because by Monolith Year 33, Maelle has aged 16 years, catching up to her real-world self. So let's try the other end, assuming 1 week equals 1 canvas year. Were that the case, then Renoir and Aline would have been trapped in this canvas for 51 weeks, or literally a year. Possible, and this would also mean if time kept moving in an unoccupied canvas, then 624 years would have passed in the 12 or so real ones, since Verso stopped playing here, lining up with Esquie saying that was centuries ago. But come on, are we really expected to believe that Renoir and Aline have been stood here for a literal year without any form of sustenance? Perhaps Chroma can sustain them in this state, and it would give Alicia's injuries time to heal, but it just seems a little too much on the lengthy end. If we instead say a day was a year, then that means these two have been here almost 2 months, with Maelle then inside for another 16 days. A much more reasonable, if potentially lengthy period, depending on how people sustain themselves within canvases. So let's try an hour. That would put 51 years at a little over 2 days, which is survivable without food and water. Though this one begs the question of what Aline was doing during the months prior to this. Clearly, Alicia's burns have had months to heal from the fire by this point. So did Aline resist jumping into Verso's canvas initially, or did the thought simply occur later? Or, if time does remain static without the presence of a painter, did she start off spending small stints of time here, slowly becoming more addicted? Again, it's never fully clear what the time ratio is, but I think somewhere between a real hour and a day equaling a year of canvas time being the most likely. But let me know in the comments your theories on canvas time. It's a very intriguing, unexplained concept of this game. But now having been cast out of the canvas by Renoir, Maelle, now fully realizing exactly who she is, can immediately return, with white hair now matching her painted self. Wandering the now desolate streets of Lumière, Maelle finds the only other person still immune to Renoir's gommage. I guess some of Aline's power he still can't undo. After all, he also couldn't destroy painted Renoir without Maelle's help.
Alicia.
Actually, I prefer Maelle.
I think I do too. But I'm not really Verso, and you're not really Maelle, are you?
You're not Verso, no. You look and sound just like him, but you're you. I'm still Maelle, though. You should have helped me remember.
Yeah, I wanted to, but I'm sorry.
Caught in another major lie, Verso is proving pretty successful with the better to beg forgiveness than ask permission technique, manipulating this group the whole time to get what he wants, only owing up to things once the truth becomes impossible to ignore. But even now, with his mother gone and presumably safe, Verso still doesn't want this life.
Your father was right to erase everyone is better this way.
Better for who? Verso would never have wanted his canvas gone. He loved Esquie and his gestrals and grandes.
It was killing our mother. Staying here so long in a make-believe world with her make-believe family.
It's not make-believe. It's not. You're not to me.
Maelle now too has grown attached to this canvas. After all, why wouldn't she? In the real world, she's scarred and mute, every day living in guilt, and it's clear how her mother sees her. But here, Maelle is a badass, with friends and a reality she can shape in whatever way she wants. To those who've lost everything, becoming a god in a painted world is all too alluring of a prospect. Maelle now hopes, because she hid the painting, that Renoir will no longer seek to erase it, not realizing that she too is succumbing to the exact same sickness as her mother.
I'm not at risk like Maman. I haven't been in this canvas that long. Besides, Papa has a soft spot for me. He'll listen.
But Renoir is not nearly that naive.
I thought I told you to stay home.
Technically, my body's at home.
When speaking to Painted Verso, the way Renoir addresses him is strange. He doesn't fully describe him as a real person, but still treats him with courtesy and respect.
Some of Eline's finest work. I regret that it caused you so much pain. What Eline did was unfair to you most of all. Please, accept the Descendre family's apologies. I know it seems absurd to offer oblivion as recompense, but perhaps that's the outcome we both desire.
In fairness, Verso's entire existence is Eline's unhealthy means of dealing with grief, and the only way she can fully come to terms with his death is for this version to be gone too. Renoir understands this. We could argue he's the only one looking at this canvas with a level head, the only one not tempted by a world where their dead son is still alive. He knows that so long as the canvas exists, Eline will always return to it.
For the sake of the living, we must part with the dead.
No, Papa, see, I hid the canvas.
She will always find it. This is our only opportunity, while she's too sick from her prolonged descent into the canvas to return.
No.
In Maelle's desperation to keep the canvas alive, though, she says a little too much, mirroring her mother's addiction.
This is my home now. You can't just decide.
Your home? After all that with your mother, you want to stay?
You know how little remains of my life outside.
Alicia, you'll die. You've already been here longer than you should.
But...
No. Look at me, I said no. I am not letting my daughter risk her life. Alicia.
No, Mama. I'm not going to lose myself if I stay.
I know full well you will, and I am not doing this again!
As Renoir summons an army of his Nevrons, Maelle realizes she can now do the same as her mother, using her gold chroma to prevent Verso from gamaging before summoning Esquie and Monoco to escape to safety, seeing and grabbing the chroma of Lune and Sciel at the final second. Returning to their camp, she's then able to bring the full party back to life, a gift, they realize, that can bring back all of Lumière.
Everyone we've lost.
Yeah, but I need chroma, and Papa controls all the chroma in the canvas.
Not all of it. The expeditioners, the ones killed by Nevrons. Gustave noticed their chroma remains in their bodies. They never dissipated, like the gamage.
Indeed, thanks to Clair's intervention meant to empower her father, she's now inadvertently given Maelle the power to beat him. Unlike her mother and father, who trapped each other in and below the monolith, with the curator we met likely a partial projection, not the full being, Maelle is free to travel the continent, harvesting the lost chroma of all dead expeditioners. Old and impure compared to Renoir's, but still capable of summoning an undead army to aid in the final battle against him.
Time for the greatest expedition in history.
Now, there are two ways to play Act 3. We can take the direct route back to Lumière, facing down Renoir immediately and reaching the ending, but around the continent are now tons of new areas to explore, some in the sky and some beneath the sea, that Esquie previously couldn't reach, with the stories of Alicia's Axon, Painted Clair, and the one who defeated the Hauler all being events that canonically the group must have experienced before the game's end. I like to think that they were part of the chroma harvesting montage, but gameplay-wise they're left as entirely optional content. The downside of playing all of this extra stuff is that we're then massively overleveled for the end of the game, but since this is a deep dive into lore, bosses, and characters, let's cover it all before we get to the actual ending, the chronological route, as it were. But first, back at camp, where Verso is rightfully overdue some strong reactions to how he's played this, with Lune scolding him for leading us to our deaths in order to save his mother, though in fairness, she wouldn't necessarily have still helped had she known the truth. So Verso's actions, whilst wrong, he saw as the only way to get what he wanted. Sciel, on the other hand, is more hopeful. Death no longer has meaning, and that means her husband, Pierre, can be brought back, despite being killed in an accident, not the gamage. They just need to wrestle back control of the canvas first. Monoco knew, of course, what Verso was doing from the start, but being a wooden paintbrush man based on the Descendre family dog meant he couldn't help but stay loyal. Plus, Verso promised a lot of fighting, which, to be fair, there was. As for Maelle, she wants to stay in this canvas, the opposite to what Verso had tried to achieve this entire time, believing still that the only way to break this cycle of tragedy is to destroy it.
Eileen wants her son back. Renoir. wants you and Eileen back. You want Gustave back. The cycle we needed to break wasn't the gommage. It's your family's cycle of grief.
As usual, Esquie is the only one unfazed by all this, though we know now that's likely because Esquie is Verso's childhood toy, and what toy is made to get mad at the kid they belong to. The following day, we'll travel the continent, harvesting Expedition Acroma, but let's imagine this process also takes us to all the regions we've never been before, like the third axon, based on Alicia. After Verso threw it into the sea, Maelle found Painted Alicia's letter, and it made her think. This whole time, Painted Alicia has continually visited Maelle, the version of her that she wishes she could be. Strong, powerful, and previously oblivious to her family's tragedy, as opposed to this broken version painted by her mother. Maelle, now understanding what it's like to be that, wants to help her painted doppelganger, who Verso explains is probably with the axon her father painted for her. Another Alicia depiction that's significantly more flattering. The Reacher is a staggering sight, stood amidst miles of tall scaffolding constructed around equally tall mountains. It does exactly what its name would suggest, reaching ever higher, attempting to touch the stars.
Papa and his parables.
Parables?
He never paints just to paint. Everything has to have layers and layers of meaning and purpose. Everything's a lesson.
What's the lesson with this one?
Hope.
Lizzie. My sister's at the top.
And Papa knows I have vertigo.
Painting Alicia as she who grasps the sky, Renoir shows just how much he believes in his daughter. Back in Lumière, she told Verso that he has a soft spot for her, but here we see it's more than that. Renoir clearly believes that Alicia can achieve whatever she sets her mind to, a stark contrast from the object of blame and guilt that her mother sees. But Renoir also painted around the Reacher a society of Nevrons trying to tear it down, reflecting the many challenges Maelle now faces.
Are they trying to fix things or break things?
She who grasps the sky. They're jealous. They wish to destroy her work. Pull her back to the ground.
Is this part of the parable?
Everything is.
The main Nevrons here are called Orphelin, meaning orphan, and Achassier, meaning stiltwalker or wading birds. Orphelin is an interesting name, given Maelle's real parents are both still alive, but it could represent how broken down her relationship has become with her mother. In fact, in their accompanying soundtrack, the French lyrics even translate to say, "The orphan is born from withered love." Now, a little further up the structure, we'll once again come across the Fading Man, present at every axon, and now clearly a piece of Renoir's soul. Pitching a question that left me pondering for a solid minute. Which is worse, to die or to be the one who survives? To grieve or to be grieved? In the end, I concluded that Maelle is now suffering more than the real Verso, but then she still has hope for a better life. Renoir understands the same, saying it's first a privilege to care deeply enough about someone to mourn their loss, but also fearing that Alicia will never forgive herself, carrying her scars forever. He's also grieving what she could have been and what is now to come for her. This axon is Renoir's hope that Alicia can reach out of the pit of despair she's trapped in and one day still touch the stars. There's also a green orphelin here, also representing Renoir, wearing the same top hat as the Fading Man, tinkering away in this workshop. Upon seeing Maelle, he tries to give her a pair of wings, a metaphor that he's still encouraging his daughter.
Look around. He just wants you to fly.
Expedition 61's journal referred to this orphelin as the Reacher's co-conspirator in the workshop, noting these two as odd ones out from the rest of this Nevron society. Renoir perhaps envisioning himself as the only one still helping Alicia after the fire, a scene so moving that 61 too couldn't help but want the Reacher to reach the sky. A ways higher, we'll encounter a third, much more dangerous Nevron called the Veilleur, a watchman or night guard capable of casting blight on the party and hugely draining everybody's health. A presence that forces Maelle, or us, to knuckle down and get good at parrying. There's also a chromatic Brasselier, a Nevron usually found in Frozen Hearts, whose name might be a pun on brazier. This one is wearing a pair of the wings forged by Renoir's orphelin, explaining how it got up here, but otherwise it's a bizarre outlier to this place. Reaching the top top of the Reacher, we find painted Alicia, Aline's painting of Maelle, painting a painting of Renoir's painting of her. Man, this game has layers. Perhaps wishing that she was this girl who could still reach for the stars, but forced to remain the shadow that her mother sees. Once again, she'll freeze time, now only wanting to speak to Maelle, the version of herself that she could only dream of being. Together they head inside the Reacher, coming face to face with its heart, a one-eyed, broken being. But nonetheless, one inhabiting this vessel still striving to climb higher. Painted Alicia likes to be around this kinder portrayal of her, but now, face to face with her real self, issues a challenge. A chance for us to prove that the real Alicia is far more powerful than what her mother sees. That she can indeed attain the same heights as this Axon. Defeated, Painted Alicia is content in knowing that her real self is capable of far more than she thought possible. And to prove it, Maelle sets the Reacher free, making it the only surviving Axon of the canvas. She lets the hopeful painting of her live, whilst granting the hopeless version her own opposite wish.
Send me to my family.
Wait.
Maelle!
But in doing so, Maelle denies Verso a final farewell to his sister, or a chance, perhaps, to convince her to stay.
You've lost 2 brothers. You know what it's like to lose your sibling and never get the chance to say goodbye. You painters, you just do what you want. You don't care how it affects the rest of us. Maelle, I wasn't ready.
You're right. I should have thought of you. I should have given you a chance to say goodbye. I'm truly sorry, Verso.
Despite now understanding one another's perspectives, it's clear that Verso and Maelle have different desires for the canvas and those in it. But still able to understand the perspective of the other, it does bring them closer. For all Verso knows though, he is now the last of his painted family. This strengthened bond later leads to Verso offering up truths for once, admitting that he's met the real Clair 3 times. Once after the fracture, where she explains the truth of this world to him, years later to try and recruit him, then finally 16 years ago, where she asked him to keep an eye on Maelle. Over the years, he checked in on her in Lumière, rescued her at the beach as his father killed Expedition 33, and this helps Maelle realize something terrible.
Did you let Renoir kill Gustave? Could you have saved him?
At this point, Maelle can already tell it's the truth. So, if Verso lies, the relationship can't progress any further, and we won't unlock Maelle's Gamage gradient attack. But if Verso tells the truth, the bond between the two will become unbreakable. Despite Maelle letting Painted Alicia die and Verso letting Gustave die, each now occupies this weird, complex role as a replacement for one another's brotherly or sisterly figure. Maelle isn't the only one with unfinished business on the continent. Lune too has always wondered what happened to her parents on Expedition 46, a group that Verso didn't travel with personally, but he does know where their journey ended, leading us to the island of Sirène's Dress. Here we see that the group was killed by a giant chromatic glissando, one of the large sliding musical snake Nevrons of Sirène's. Defeating it and avenging Lune's parents, Journal 46 recounts how Lune's mother fought off this thing for 4 days, saving many other members of the group before peacefully dying with the knowledge that Lune will finish their work. A flattering level of faith in their daughter, yes, but also suggesting they valued her more as a contingency than a daughter. But this is the closure Lune needs. Now free from the constant wonder of what exactly happened to her parents, she's finally able to live a little. Later, we'll find her writing not a mission journal, nor a catalogue of Nevrons, but a song. A personal indulgence done purely for her own happiness in a life that she can now live for herself. As for Sciel, in Act 3, she'll finally tell Verso her full story, the reason that she hates water, and why in her Sirène vision, Pierre was holding a baby.
When I lost Pierre, I
I tried to swim away from Lumière. I swam for as long as I could. As far as the waves would carry me. Until I could no longer swim. But I woke up the next day in Lumière. On the docks, I was alive. And I have no idea what happened. What I didn't know then, what the hospital told me, was that I was pregnant. But that I had lost the child.
Sciel.
Despite having had similar thoughts of his own, Verso reminds Sciel that in this world, created by his real child self, lives somebody whose very purpose for existing is to comfort people who are sad, or help them when consumed by dark thoughts. There's a reason Esquie called Sciel his terrible swimmer friend when we met him. All those years ago, when she floated out to sea in a fit of despair, Esquie heard her crying. And though he didn't understand why she stopped swimming in the middle of the ocean, seeing she was in danger, he carried her back to shore. The most innocent creature in this canvas, imbued with the power to hear sadness in others and do his best to make them feel better. That is the first thing Verso made. Is it really any wonder then that he sacrificed himself for Alicia back in the real world? Yeah, I'm not crying. You're crying. As for Esquie's own story, he now has all his special rocks save for one, Uri, which is back in Francois' cave. This one will let Esquie swim underwater, and he has a genius idea to get it back.
We trade him a different rock.
But even after sculpting the best Francois and Clair miniature ever, the turtle is none too happy with the effort.
Is that supposed to be me?
But after Verso defeats Francois in a fight, he does, to be fair, ask that we leave the other rock. Clearly, underneath his literal stony exterior, Francois really is just sad. His friend abandoned him centuries ago, leaving him immobile in this cave to do nothing. Fortunately, this at least does bring him some happiness in the end.
Thanks for the rock. It's nice to have a picture of Clair.
In contrast to Francois though, if Verso asks Esquie his thoughts on him being a painted version of the real Verso, Esquie will have a far more open-minded answer.
You're my friend. Other Verso was also my friend. You are cousins. Same, but each different. Why would that bother me?
The difference between Esquie and Francois here likely provides a lot of insight into Verso and Clair as children as well. Verso, the younger, more carefree sibling, seeing the canvas as a place to go on grand adventures, with Clair being the more reserved, responsible one, perhaps under more parental pressure due to being older. Responsibility she'd continue to put on herself into adulthood, hence her father depicting her with a city on her shoulders. But despite the clash of personalities between Esquie and Francois, they continue to share the same cave. In the same way, arguing siblings still care for one another. Underneath it all, Francois would certainly be sadder if he lost Esquie too. This leaves Monoco's story, Verso's loyal companion who now will get the chance to demonstrate our loyalty to as we journey to the sacred river for Noco's rebirth. Let's translate this whole situation to its real-life influences. Painted Renoir basically killed a puppy, Noco, back in Old Lumière, and now the elder dog, Monoco, wants his companion back. So we're going to the pet shop to get a new, very similar but still not the same puppy to replace the old one. Of course, it's not quite that morbid in the canvas, but that's basically the situation we're in. Once reaching the sacred river though, we're stopped by the Gestral's stern-headed chief, Golgra, who for some reason is insanely powerful for a Gestral. Clearly, Verso had some particular inspiration for painting her. We never see a third dog in the manor named Golgra, and I don't think there is one. Rather, the constant arm-folding pose, sensing when Monoco is up to no good, and towering presence over the other characters all suggest that Golgra was based on an authority figure in the Descendre household. Possibly another version of Aline, we don't really know what she was like when they were kids, or perhaps Golgra is based on a strict member of the household staff, assuming this family didn't manage such a gigantic manor by themselves. Golgra could be be a housekeeper or a chef, someone that would have intimidated Verso when he was little and kept the family dogs in line. In fact, the subtitles even read Golgra as chef of the village, not chief, and the Gestral Village manor door leads directly to the kitchen, which might not be a coincidence. With immense skill on this occasion though, we can defeat Golgra, and she'll let our queue jumping slide. Usually, Gestrals need to wait in line to be rebirthed, but as expected, the new Noco has no recollection of past events. Too disoriented and confused to resume travelling with us, he sadly must remain in the Gestral Village, leaving Monoco to mourn who he was before. Tying up each companion storyline, more lore can be found in the remaining areas we've yet to explore, where the fates of additional characters and expeditions are revealed, and further insight gleaned into the childhood of Verso through his painted worlds. So let's start with Frozen Hearts, the giant ruined train station up in the mountains where painted Verso and Monoco once lived together. We encountered a tainted version of this place inside the Monolith, but the real deal will be even tougher. It's also the resting place of Expedition 51, whose journal doesn't outline the goal of this group exactly, rather focusing on the unbreakable camaraderie between friends, a union that strengthens each member of the party in kind, allowing all to tap into their greatest capabilities. A dynamic not unlike what we have in Expedition 33, with companion affinities forging deeper bonds of trust to unlock more powerful gradient attacks. Frozen Hearts is also home to another white Nevron, who it's clear now are all creations of Clair's. Incomplete drafts, if you will, who lack the infusion of anger and aggression towards expeditioners, instead simply wanting to fulfill the purpose for which they were originally made. For this danseuse, that's to be a dance teacher, who can teach Lune to dance perfectly by throwing fireballs. But hey, in fairness, the end result does look epic, so mission accomplished. We'll return to the other white Nevrons shortly. At the top of Frozen Hearts lives the Gargant, the full version this time, not the tainted copy from the Monolith, and it's a very interesting structure. An icy mass with a steam train for a head and tracks woven into the arms, able to use both lava and ice attacks despite being a huge block of ice. Clearly, this isn't one of Clair's normal creations. In fact, there's a few unique Nevrons like this still scattered about, all of which we'll look at, though all I think were created by Clair many years earlier, when she and Verso still played here. We'll later learn that Lampmaster was created by Clair to torment her younger brother, so it stands to reason that Gargant could play a similar role, taking Verso's favourite thing, trains, creating from it a writhing monster for him to be afraid of. I also doubt she made this one after his death, as for a time, Clair too wanted to preserve everything she and Verso built together here, as we'll see in the next region. Falling Leaves tells a story, home to many tree-based Nevrons like saplings and huge hulking glazes, which in French means clay. An interesting choice, given this whole area seems comprised of sap, but perhaps there's a reason behind it. See, in this place, the Nevrons have a tendency not just to kill expeditioners, but to absorb them. The same thing we saw with that initial mound of bodies back in the Spring Meadows. In fact, Expedition 35 made terrible yet heroic use of this coagulation that killed them, literally using their bodies to create a bridge for those who come after, allowing us to fight this chromatic ballet of Nevrons who must have travelled here from Sirene's island. Also here, we'll find another fragment of Verso's soul, surprised to see us still alive, claiming that everyone else was killed by the paintings of the other, who's been in his life from the moment he was born. Clair. Down at the base of this region, we'll find this disturbing thing called the Lady of Sap, a fragment of Clair's soul who claims to be killing expeditioners for Verso, for both of them, out of respect for what they created. Reporting this back to Verso's soul, he'll say that's never what he wanted, opening the way to the main Nevron that did all of this, begging us to put a stop to it. On the way up, we learn that this thing also destroyed Expedition 49, who were unable to last against it without healers, but in prioritizing them, lacked the firepower to kill it, slowly being defeated in a war of attrition, just like Aline, and now it's up to us to finish their work. Scavenger is a dark magic wielding creature following the same tree-ish theme, with the two faces, I think, being of adult Verso and Clair. To cast a theory on how this Nevron was created, I think after Verso's death in the real world, Aline wasn't the only one to find comfort in his canvas. Clair too spent a lot of her childhood here. Much of what exists in this world is the result of both her and Verso's efforts. But when Aline came, wanting to build a new life inside the last fragment of her son's soul, she changed a lot of things. Aside from painters, no people existed in the canvas before. The ones that now do were created by Aline, their addition changing the very nature of what Clair and Verso built. Perhaps in the earlier days of Clair's grief, she built this Nevron with the purpose of preserving the original painting. The name Scavenger would imply that it picks up broken pieces before attempting, grotesquely in this case, to transform them back into something more akin to the world of before. A place of nature and trees, with that desire in Clair's soul forming into the Lady of Sap. Later, she would create the majority force of Nevrons simply to weaken her mother, but Scavenger's purpose is unique. The same way Goblu guarded just one part of the flying waters, and there's other Nevrons too that go simply beyond killing. Upon defeating Scavenger, Verso's soul will thank us with the song Until Next Life, the lyrics of which hint even more that this place is built around Clair's grief for Verso. Another huge woodland area with a fair bit of lore is called Yellow Harvest, the main home to all clay-based Nevrons like jars and gaults, which is the name for a thick, heavy clay, again suggesting Clair to be more of a sculptor than a painter. The same with potiers, meaning potter, somebody who makes pots, though I think some of the Nevrons Clair created here again date back further than the majority that hunt the canvas for Expedition Achroma, like these giant things.
Wow. That Nevron is the size of a mountain.
Is it eating the mountain?
This is also the final resting site of another 3 expeditions. 38 were reduced to a final 2, and after burying their fallen members, they chose, unlike us, to give in, waiting out their gamage in this beautiful place. Though it sadly looks as though they were killed by a jar Nevron before that happened. 44 tried a more original tactic, disguising themselves in the bodies of actual Nevrons, hoping to traverse the continent unnoticed. Though sadly, the other Nevrons saw right through this disguise and slaughtered this expedition when their guard was likely down. This leaves 59, who seemingly died to a similar mass of coagulating sap as we saw in Falling Leaves. Stupidly, a member of their group convinced everybody to try eating a Nevron, which of course made everybody ill. When resting to drink some mushroom broth, it then seems that this sap turned into the shape of a glaze, which grabbed and absorbed this expedition. Quite what drew so many expeditions to Yellow Harvest in the first place isn't entirely clear, though perhaps it's as simple as just being one of the most scenic places in the canvas. The main set of Nevrons that we haven't fully explained the origins of yet are the few non-hostile white variants found about the canvas. The jar from Spring Meadows that wanted light, the Demonure without a sea mine, the Hexka without crystals, and Danseuse without a student are all ones we've met already, with the recurring theme being that each lacks colour, but also a specific something tied to their purpose. But those aren't the only white Nevrons. There's also a small bourgeon who wants to grow huge like the rest by eating the skin of another of its kind, a white Chalier who's unable to feel the thrill of battle like its brethren and wants to challenge us, a Portier that lacks physical form, comprised entirely of the blue orb we usually shoot, brought to life once we give it wooden boards. Then the white Troubadour who we can help learn to play by dodging or absorbing the correct notes, and finally the white Benacieux, who will, in exchange for chroma, discuss the philosophy behind this canvas, the Descendre family and their destructive cycle of grief, before rising from the ground with a desire to create a tale of its own. Each of these white Nevrons is bound together by the theme of being incomplete, but another that may tie into this story is Sprong, a giant humanoid metal sculpture whose design is quite unlike anything else on the continent. Defeating it, Verso will explain why.
That was one of her first creations.
Clair made Sprong before most, if not all, the other Nevrons, perhaps only shortly after she made Francois, and it therefore would have lived in this canvas for centuries, but this isn't the only Sprong we can find. Travelling to a place called the Fountain, we can see another dead Sprong, perhaps a failed first attempt, or another copy that some lucky expeditioners managed to take down. This was also the landing site of Expedition 84, the first to follow Expedition 0, once Lumière started noticing the gamage. Village. This group naturally approached their journey with more naivety than those that followed, maybe taking down this other sprong but falling as well in the process. But the fountain is also home to our final white Nevron, Blanche, meaning white in French, contrasting with this Nevron's usual name of Noir, meaning black. Blanche will explain that the white Nevrons are incomplete, unfinished creations, drafts, if you will, living proof of Clair's imperfections, which Blanche was specifically tasked with destroying. But moved by their pitiful state, it found itself unable to do so, eventually realizing, after years of wondering, that it too was a white Nevron. It'll also reward us with 100 Lumina if we aid all the others, so that's well worth doing.
Why did she make Nevron feet so pointy? I can't polish them without poking myself. It's terribly inconvenient.
This might actually suggest the reason they're pointy was to stop the real Monoco from attacking the actual sculptures. Either that, or again, Clair just wasn't great at crafting feet. As to when exactly she painted the white Nevrons, I have two guesses. Either they were concepts, created when she was younger and less experienced, still playing in this canvas with Verso, or they were her first attempts after the fracture, when she created Nevrons en masse to tip the scales in Renoir's favour. Either way, their shunned existence illustrates Clair's perfectionism, a hatred of looking at any work she isn't 100% proud of. Continuing with Clair's more unique creations, let's look next at Serpent Fair, a word combo of serpent and fair, meaning a lighthouse or beacon. A perfect name for a ginormous snake with a lighthouse for a head, which is also responsible for eating Verso multiple times in the past, as well as ending the efforts of Expedition 43, a group who attempted to reach the Paintress with submarines, but were perhaps lured by the glow of the lighthouse. Presumably another Clair creation, given its uniqueness, but perhaps she deliberately created it as a harvester of naval expeditions. Moving on, Grosse Tête literally means big head, and indeed it takes a certain level of big-headedness to attack, 24 times in a row. Then we return to Lampmaster, whose lore runs significantly deeper than some creepy thing from Stonewave Cliffs. All around the continent are various entrances to the painting workshop, a sort of black and white subdimension created by Clair, where she worked on this thing specifically to torment her brother, a beast radiant yet fearsome, woven from the very essence of luminescence. Honestly, this whole area makes Clair out to be a kind of terrible person. Jealousy twists and love blinds. Her canvas conjured a nightmare, a creature to keep me awake. She wove her spite into the canvas, birthing a horror to plague my nights. Clair was clearly jealous of Verso. Perhaps she felt threatened by him, or just wanted more control over this canvas. So she created Lampmaster, a writhing mass of arms because she hated painting legs, plaguing Verso's nightmares, or just downright keeping him awake at night. Perhaps she thought that if Verso stopped dreaming, he'd stop creating his own ideas, things that perhaps impressed their parents and threatened her superiority. And from her treatment of the white Nevrons, Clair clearly hated anything that undermined her own talents. Though a more upbeat theory could just be that Clair was creating a challenge for her brother, something that ties in more with the existence of the Endless Tower, or Gauntlet Challenge, where she and Verso used to have fun fighting Nevrons. In fact, coming here ourselves as Maelle, we'll be able to talk with the real Clair, who's seemingly re-entered the canvas. She argues that out of the two of them, she is the one who painted half this world, and Maelle therefore has no right to be overprotective of it now. Whilst Clair and Verso adventured in here, Maelle's younger years were spent reading in her room. Again, a nod to her love of writing, hinting at how the writers manipulated her. Fighting through the Endless Tower will allow us to once again face all the Nevrons created by both Clair and Renoir, with the final challenge, or at least it was the final challenge until the new update, which we'll get to in a bit, being a testament to Clair's own talent. Painted Love is her own recreation of the Descendre parents in their curator and paintress forms, possibly also hinting at Clair's deeper desire for them to make up. On a wider level, it also rhymes with Tainted Love, which is exactly the state the two are in right now. Defeating both, Clair will impart some actual nice sisterly advice, warning against getting caught up in Aline and Renoir's mess, telling us simply to live a life we enjoy, and that if we're not having fun, then to do something else. Maybe she's not so terrible after all. Then again, Clair isn't nearly so merciful to the people inside the canvas. Up above the clouds, we'll find yet another rendition of the manor, this time shattered, broken, and strewn across the sky, serving now as a museum and home to the most powerful of Nevrons. Inside is another fragment of Verso's soul, explaining that somebody is trapped in the atelier behind him, which won't open until we defeat the 4 deadliest Nevrons around here: Lampmaster, 3 Aviks, a Goblu, and a Dueliste. With all that done, the atelier will then open, with the warning of a threat inside unlike anything we've ever faced before, and a prompt of, are we sure we want to continue? Inside, surrounded by Nevrons, is painted Clair, our Verso's actual sister, who was found and painted over by her real self after the fracture. Then put to work for eternity, painting most of the Nevrons that torment this world. An empty shell of her former self, heavily strengthened but now lacking mind, soul, or heart, proving by far to be Expedition 33's toughest fight yet, with an army of Nevrons at her back, launching all sorts of special attacks. Defeating her, through some miracle, will restore a tiny fragment of her sanity though. Not enough to come back to us, but enough to be aware of what she's become, leading her, in a moment of clarity, to choose the same option as painted Alicia. Once again, Verso is forced to witness another family member die. Her decision understandable, but nonetheless heartbreaking for him. Returning to real Verso's soul, he'll be sad to hear that happen to her, explaining that in his view, everything inside the canvas is as much alive as what's outside. Esquie, the Gestrals, the Grandis, even Aline's painting are all welcome as far as he's concerned. For him, painting, like music, should be a celebration, but Clair only sees it as a means of achieving her own idea of perfection. That isn't quite the end of Painted Clair's story. Well, it isn't the whole of it, but before we return to that, there's a few more journals that clear up some additional lore, starting with somebody Verso cared about deeply, Julie from Search and Rescue. Just like our expedition, Julie was won over by Verso's charm. Back then, he and Painted Renoir were still working together, hoping to convince everyone that the Paintress wasn't the enemy, but rather their savior. Of course, the truth within that was too absurd to be believable, but after Verso survived an explosion that should have killed him, then lied to cover up that he was immortal, this broke Julie's trust. Eventually, she agreed to capture and interrogate him for real answers, where Verso once again hid truth with lies.
You'd have thought I'd gone mad. Doppelgangers. Canvas worlds. But Papa's right. We can't take the risk. Too much is at stake. It had to be done. It had to. Clair already took our sister. If we want to save our family, our world, our people, we can't take any chances.
Verso, influenced by his father, chose to kill someone he loved to escape, hoping that in the future, once Aline was freed, she could bring back Julie and all the others. But clearly, after another 67 years losing more and more people, growing to understand the toll this was taking on his mother in the real world, Verso grew tired, slowly turning against his father and becoming the person we know in Monolith Year 33, intent on sending his mother home, and in doing so, destroying the canvas and himself along with it. Now, let's take a quick look at any expedition journals we haven't covered yet, starting with 65, who had one of the happier endings, living out their days until they gamaged with the Grandis at Monoco Station, which, unless everybody was 64 on this expedition, could have actually been a good many years for them. 64 tried to set up a radio network on the continent, but had their lines intercepted by Painted Renoir, who tracked down and destroyed all of them. 62 turned their expedition into a kill count competition, similar to 41. 60 we'll come back to when we find their journal during the ending, but that one's very exciting. 53 faced the decision of having to put down a comatose member of their group near the small bourgeois, whilst the 48s committed mutiny against their captain, after he kept getting their members killed. 47 had another more outlandish tactic, attempting to use alcohol to calm their nerves and fight more fluidly. 3 guesses how that turned out. 45 succumbed to the giant sapling in the crushing cavern, a wall-crushing trap that Clair must have designed to efficiently eliminate expeditioners, another example of her cruelty and malice. Then back in Old Lumière, which can be more fully explored on a second visit, we can find Journal 42, a group that attempted to catalogue everything on the continent, hoping their knowledge could somehow reach and aid future expeditions. In fact, we could say that 42 were seeking out the answers to life, the universe, and everything. The last survivor of 37 simply gave up after the rest of her group were killed by Nevrons and painted Renoir, so she spent her final days lying on a Gestral beach, trying to beat a wall climbing challenge, sadly gamaging before she did. 36 left nothing behind but a poem in a white tree, which brings us down to 34, who incredibly managed to make it all the way north to a region called the Crows. Their strategy was elemental attacks, which worked well until they came across Nevrons with no elemental weaknesses. Their conclusion being that Gustave's Lumina Converter may be the key to victory after all. How right they were. Aside from Expedition 60, which we'll get to later, just one more expeditioner story remains, and it's quite possibly the most tragic of all. Once retrieving Esquie's final rock, Uri, we can descend to the deepest region of the canvas. Renoir's Drafts is a ginormous chasm beneath the Monolith, where Aline sealed Renoir for 67 years. Again, I think his curator form must merely have been a projection of some of his power, but mostly he was sealed beneath here, where he worked on his own disturbing and highly dangerous Nevrons like the Aberration, which seems to be a corrupted version of the Clair Obscur from inside the Monolith. Then there's the Creation, which appears almost dog or horse-like at first, but look more closely and you'll see it's fashioned from a writhing mass of dead expeditioners, bent around this huge void orb. So an interesting choice of name. Yes, Renoir has created something here, but only by destroying so many lives in the process. Though the soul fragment of Renoir himself makes a little more sense of this. You see, Renoir paints not to achieve a perfect product like Clair, but purely to enjoy the process of creation, shaping a half-formed idea into existence, creating order from chaos into something specifically unique to him. That is perhaps why creation is so strange. It's not meant to be a perfect product, it's just Renoir creating something, anything from the chaos around him. That this place is called Renoir's Drafts further implies that nothing here was supposed to be a finished product. We can even see another version of Sirène down here, though that does pose a question as to the timing of things. Presumably, Renoir created the Axons at the time of the fracture, using their supporting power to try and push Aline from the canvas. But does this mean that he came down here first and sketched up some early versions beforehand? It would make sense to be prepared, of course, and time means very little inside the canvas, but it also suggests that before this became Renoir's prison, it was just his workshop, deep beneath the world. But beneath Renoir's Drafts is a region deeper still. Off the edge of a precipice, laden with the same golden swords from Old Lumière, we'll descend into the abyss. A blank, lightless void at the bottom of the world, and in its center, trapped beneath everything, an ancient warrior.
These swords, they look like the ones in Old Lumière.
Ah, so he's the one who felled the Axon. Simon.
You know him?
He's an old friend of mine. We joined Expedition Zero together. He disappeared and I thought... Looks like you met Clair. I'll lay you to rest, my friend.
Simon may just look like a beaten-down expeditioner, painted over by Clair in the same way her doppelganger was, but don't underestimate the appearance. Simon is unquestionably the most dangerous, most ferocious being in this entire canvas, and defeating him will take an extraordinary degree of build planning, muscle memory, and skill. The first phase is quite winnable, but then Simon hears the voice of Painted Clair, the woman that he loves.
My love, these foes are beneath you. You, who have fought heaven and earth, and subdued giants. To find me, to free me from her grasp. Would you fall now to the likes of them? While your oath remains unfulfilled, rise. Your enemies await.
By the fact that he can make them vanish, these golden swords all seem to be a manifestation of Simon's power. Absorbing these ones alone makes him almost unbeatable, but there's so many more back in old Lumière. So I think we can possibly say that this most difficult of fights isn't even Simon at its best. So let's go back to see how he got this good. Before the fracture, Simon and Painted Clair had a loving life together. Then, when the real Clair stole away her doppelganger to manage a Nevron factory, Simon joined Expedition Zero to find her. But instead, he found and was fooled by the real Clair, who, seeing this man's devotion for her, fashioned him into another tool, imbuing Simon with extraordinary power beyond even that of the Painted Descendra family, before asking him to kill the Hauler, Clair's Axon, which he hated. The fallen swords in Old Lumière and the one embedded in the Hauler's head are all his work. Not a painter or another great being, just a man. With supernatural abilities, yes, but ultimately driven by love. The tragic part being that he did all of this for the wrong person, which he learned after entering the Monolith and meeting Aline, who told him the truth. To be fair, what Aline wants may not be best for her, but it's certainly best for the dwellers of the canvas. It was the only time they were able to live harmoniously. But Aline saw Simon no differently than Clair did, just a tool to suit her own ends. She then sent him beneath the Monolith to battle Renoir, and clearly some great battle did take place down here. But Renoir too took control over Simon's mind, driving it past breaking points over the decades that followed, so that when we find him, Simon can no longer distinguish friend from foe. His journal recounting his last clear thoughts. Or should that be Clair thoughts?
My final thoughts are only a few. I despair. But one day, our suffering will end, and we will find our way back to each other. In this life, or another.
Left with nothing but insane skills, like removing expeditioners from the canvas and draining everyone's health to just one, Simon took me about 3 solid days to defeat, but finally doing so grants him the same freedom in death as his long-lost love, recognizing Verso in his final moments and handing over his sword as he gamages. It's quite possibly the best boss battle ever, proving that even inside a fictional painted world, one man, driven simply by the desire to find the one he loves, can achieve more than whole armies, axons, and even gods. Now, Simon pretty much was the last foe to face, chronologically, before getting to the actual end of the game. That was until about a week ago, where, completely unsurprisingly, Expedition 33 absolutely swept the 2025 Game Awards, taking home 9 of their 12 nominations, including Game of the Year, which it absolutely deserves. At which exact moment, the developers also decided to drop their free new update, namely adding photo mode, some incredibly difficult new bosses in the Endless Tower, such as a Phase for Simon, which we'll get to, and biggest of all, the new area, Verso's Drafts. A place that shines even more light on what exactly Verso was like as a child. Located far to the south near Lumière, Verso's Drafts is one of the oldest places in the canvas, likely containing Verso's very earliest creations, aside from Esquie and Clair's Francois.
Verso mentioned this place, but he never showed it to me.
It was his private hideout, and he wanted to escape.
Yeah. No sisters allowed.
Stepping inside, Verso's draft is clearly a place made for a single purpose, an extreme of the reason Verso always enjoyed painting, to have fun. Immediately, we'll meet the very earliest forms of Verso's gestrals, half-baked with a finish of swirling chroma, making them drafts in the most literal sense. But unlike Clair, who sought to destroy her white Nevron drafts due to them being imperfect, Verso made a home for them in this play area part of the canvas, which he filled with pretty much everything a child would want. A water park where the gestrals made an incredibly difficult challenge of diving into hoops, a cave system made entirely out of sweets, a play area with giant renditions of children's toys, and a magic train station, again illustrating Verso's total love of trains. This place also, however, is home to all manner of hostile creatures. Not Nevrons this time, everything here is made by Verso, instead fun hybrids of gestrals, grandies, and whatever Francois is. The Francois variants are called licorns, French for unicorn, with their horns in this case doubling up as party hats. Indeed, many of the things here appear to also be permanently celebrating a birthday party. Just like Francois, licorns can't move, they have no legs, though Francois was originally painted by Clair, so clearly Verso respected his sister's creation so much that he wanted to recreate his own version in this private little corner of the canvas, though he also had fun creating hybrid versions using his gestral design as well. Frogtail has the body of a gestral with the form of Francois as a head. The name is clearly also a nod to Francois, with the tail part potentially implying this whole body bit to be as though Francois had a tail, even though they're different spellings. Though if you do have a better theory on this one, please do tell me. There's also the Lycornopeds, which I'm pretty certain means unicorn on legs or feet, though it's on wheels with 4 boxing glove arms. Most variants of this one, in fact, have gestral heads and are called machinopeds, which I think means machine on legs. The boxing gloves combined with the Roman Legion hairstyle show that Verso clearly designed these things as sparring partners. They're hostile because, in this part of the canvas, Verso wanted things to fight. Why? Well, we'll get onto that. A version of the Grandies too exists here, fighting with 2 giant lollipops, and these are called the Barba Sucette, translating to beard lollipop, I think. I mean, they certainly do have a big beard and lollipops, and if we go back to the idea of the Grandies being Verso's interpretation of grown-ups, then it makes sense that they're the ones supplying the sweets. This place is also home to an additional mime, which possibly clears up the mime's origins. Everything in this part of the canvas was created by Verso, so it stands to reason that he created this mime too. Though, right back at the very start of the game, we also fought a mime in Lumière, a place created and later moved by Aline after the real Verso had died. Though it is still possible Verso also created that one, and it simply moved and wound up in Lumière later. But the mime in Verso's draft is wearing a mask over their usual human-shaped face. Now, this is actually a feature of all Verso's creations. Everything is either completely faceless or wears a mask. And I think perhaps in the way Clair might have struggled to craft feet on her Nevrons, Verso, it seems, never managed to get actual faces quite right. But how then would he have created all the other mimes with their more realistic faces? Well, another possibility is that the mimes were an early joint creation of both Verso and Clair. Indeed, their bodies are reminiscent of gestrals, but perhaps Clair then helped with the faces. Or Verso could have had help from his mother, Aline, who out of everyone excels in capturing realism, with the only mime Verso created entirely by himself then being this one, hence the lack of an actual face. The fact that they appear to have pervaded every corner of the canvas definitely implies they've been woven into the fabric of it from the earliest days. Down at the base of Candyland is also a swing carousel where gestrals are forced to wait in a queue. Luckily, a very cool gestral, with the haircut Verso clearly aspired to have from a young age, somehow has a fast pass ticket, allowing each member of the party to indulge in some light enjoyment, with painted Verso somehow getting nostalgia for a ride that he never truly rode. Presumably, the real Verso also rode one of these in the real world with his family, and when Aline painted this version, she made sure to include that clearly cherished family memory. But the best place for learning about Verso's relationship with his family is the treehouse. With decor modelled after the manor and containing a grand piano, this is possibly Child Verso's most special place and truest expression of himself. The fact that it's filled with pictures of his family then says a lot. lot. Despite his parents likely forcing him to paint more than he would like, Verso cherishes the memories of his mother teaching him piano and walks with his father. We can also see a painting of him annoying his older sister Clair, no doubt while she's focusing on much more serious work, and clearly Verso has loved and cared about Alicia from the moment she was born, standing smilingly over her crib when she was just a baby. This also indicates the age Verso must have been when he painted this. At about 10 years older than Maelle, that means this was painted by a 10-year-old Verso. Though that's not to say everything here he painted when he was 10. Maybe this place existed for years before, with the drawing of Alicia added after she was born. Monoco, the dog version, is also included just as prominently as the rest of the family, showing how heavily valued he was by Verso as a friend. It's no wonder that Monoco in the canvas is equally as loyal. Just outside, there's also a door that only opens with birthday cake and leads to a train station, which eventually brings us back to a similar exit door and a Gestral trapped this side of it, desperately needing our help to get out, with no distinguishable lock or handles by which to do so. Then, after we simply push the door open, the Gestral is so amazed that he stops thinking. Yeah, that's again definitely reminiscent of the logic of some dogs. After that though is another train, taking us beyond Verso's draft, this fun celebration of everything he loved, to the root of all evil. As we've established, the first thing Verso made in his canvas was based on his cuddly toy. Esquie is probably the world's most powerful being, but only cares about adventures, fun, and helping those who are sad. Behind Verso's drafts, though, lies the antithesis to all of that. The most villainous of villains, an outlet for all of Verso's own sadness and insecurity, named Osquio. So all of the hostile creations in the main area are just sort of warm-ups, with the main event, the main challenge, being to defeat Osquio.
You stand before Osquio, ruler of all the trades, champion of the faithful land, and ultimate cake eater of the universe.
You have so many new titles.
But why were you upside down in the water? Holding my breath. For as long as possible, my record is 5,000 years! Good job. Mine is 6,000 years. Prepare for annihilation!
Osquio, it is you who shall be annihilated. Prepare to do battle.
Really?
To be fair, Osquio is a tough two-stage fight. Not as difficult as regular Simon, but certainly up there. Which makes sense, of course, when he's an evil Esquie. But that little intro sheds some interesting new light on the lore. Specifically, the fact that both these two have apparently held their breath for 5,000 and 6,000 years. If true, it certainly narrows down our theories on time ratios from earlier. No way could a week equal a year anymore, nor realistically could a day, unless Esquie spent most of the time the canvas could have existed holding his breath underwater. We've already discounted a minute at the other end, so an hour is now looking most likely. Then again, this could just be Esquie and Osquio bragging out of all proportion. Lying is certainly something in Verso's repertoire, as he who masks truth with lies, and both of these two are his creations. Also, back in the Gestral Baths, we're told 78 days is the actual record, though the Gestral then promptly corrects that to 78 years, which again could just be an off-the-cuff exaggeration, so I don't think any of the numbers thrown around here should be taken as gospel. Defeating Osquio, after a good few attempts though, this is one of the only times painted Verso clearly appears to be enjoying his existence, reveling in this fight and the fighting talk that comes with it.
I am the most powerful being in the world. I cannot be defeated by hooligans.
Hooligans. I I see you're friends with Francois.
Francois? Never! He's an Esquie lover!
Do not underestimate these hooligans. We, hooligans, have surprised many a foe. Shall we?
Finally!
If you don't mind, we'll handle this adventure.
Diving towards Osquio, Verso and Esquie get to relive some of the most cherished memories from real Verso's childhood, and it becomes abundantly clear that Osquio was Verso's literalized means of beating down his insecurities.
You will never be a good musician.
Let's call the pot.
You had no choice but to paint.
Kids have quite the imagination, huh?
Yeah. They do.
That was fun. I'm glad I got to experience that for myself. Thank you.
With an understanding look between Painted Verso and Verso's soul, both shadows of the real Verso, our version gets to leave just a little happier than before. Still feeling like a bit of an imposter probably, but getting some joy of his own for once. Now, no doubt Osquio was partly based on Verso's own parents and lineage, the pressure to paint that he was born into, stealing the life that he wanted for himself, but rather than taking it out on his parents in the real world, Verso built another immortal cuddly toy through which to vent those worries and frustrations. And though we never actually meet Verso, just every possible remnant and derivative of him instead, he definitely seemed like a great and caring kid, with the darker side, the lying, likely becoming more prominent later, perhaps born out of the discovery that it was simply easier to get what he wants by withholding information rather than airing everything in the open. Instead of causing conflict between him and his parents by admitting he'd rather be a musician, he just internalized that struggle for himself within the canvas. Although, by the fact that this was Verso's only canvas that we know of, I wouldn't be surprised if he did, for a time, up until he died I guess, go on to become a musician. The other main thing added in the new update are additional fights in the Endless Tower. The various other frames behind Clair now lead to genuinely insane boss battles, all of which again must have been painted by Clair, starting with a chromatic lampmaster, then a pair of duelists aptly named the Duolists, which both perform insanely long attacks one after the other. After that is Clair Unleashed, an even more powerful version of Painted Clair, and finally Painted Clair's Lover. Basic Simon was honestly difficult enough, but this version is a Simon Phase 4. In fact, maybe this is more akin to the version of Simon that killed the Hauler, before he expended a bunch of his power by firing all those giant swords in Old Lumière. Now, all of these bosses further illustrate the sheer level of Clair's power to paint. Whilst Renoir expends a lot of his efforts on capturing parable and metaphor, and Aline puts a heavy focus on accuracy and realism, Clair's sole focus with these is to create the most despicably powerful things possible as the absolute challenges for her sister. The original Painted Clair and Simon, first made by Aline, both became so powerful because they were painted over by Clair. But clearly now, given complete agency of her own to make them from scratch, Clair can paint variants more powerful still. And perhaps if she'd provided these beings to aid her father in the final battle, things would have gone differently. But Clair's whole objective with that, with painting the Nevrons, is to help without getting sucked in. Therefore, she doesn't involve herself further in the actual ending, as I think she genuinely believes Alicia should be free to determine what she wants for herself. But, speaking of fighting the real Renoir, I think it's high time we returned to Lumière to determine the ultimate fate of the canvas. With Simon already defeated, reaching Renoir shouldn't help be a breeze, especially now with Maelle's undead army.
Tomorrow comes.
Speeding towards the end, we find ourselves right back where we started, with time to reflect on just how much things have changed. We've gone from a ragtag team of survivors fighting against all odds for an ever-diminishing future to a scarred goddess in a grieving family. In the middle of Lumière is again the soul of Verso, admiring his mother's paintwork. Of the whole family, Aline's paintings are the truest to life, but Verso himself always painted for enjoyment, not perfection. It's the same reason he loves to play the piano. Even now, at the end, his soul is still playing in the Lumière Opera House. But just before that, down in the waters beneath is the final expedition journal, and by far the most ridiculously impressive one. Expedition 60 believed that the human body alone could prove more powerful than any technology or equipment. A laughable prospect in theory, until we see just what they achieved. With the power of nothing but pure muscle, they successfully charged the monolith barrier without gamaging and reached the Paintress, who, like she did with Simon, simply explained the truth, leading most of the 60s towards the monolith to confront Renoir, whilst this man was tasked with warning Lumière. At 59 years of age, he swam almost the whole way back to Lumière, but couldn't quite outswim the gamage. As for the rest, perhaps they're the ones Renoir fashioned into creations, though I can't imagine he had an easy time defeating them.
So here I write my final message. Bare naked muscles will save the world. And don't waste time on the Paintress. Aim for the bottom of the monolith.
It kind of undermines all the tech, airships, and siege engines when these guys proved so much more successful with nothing but muscle and training. But pressing onward, Verso's soul appears again. The part of him that keeps this entire canvas alive, forced to ask if he should just continue painting forever for the sake of everyone else. But by the next time we see him, he suggests the opposite, that the painting must be destroyed for the sake of his family and himself. Approaching Renoir, Alicia makes one final plea to her father to save it.
I just want you to understand what this canvas means to me.
I do understand. I know how powerful and intoxicating it is. How deeply attached we can become to the worlds we pour our hearts and souls into. I was enthralled, and it nearly killed me.
It doesn't mean you have to erase Verso's canvas.
Child, do you think I want to? After all the sorrows we've endured, do you really think that I want to destroy this last piece of his soul?
Then don't.
Life keeps forcing cruel choices.
But this time, Maelle isn't alone. In her grief, Sciel also made a choice that cost her her child, and Lune's entire life was decided by her parents. Both were affected by similar choices to the ones Renoir is making now, and both suffered dearly for it. But even then, Renoir remains unswayed.
Your friends speak truth, and it changes nothing.
You treat me as if I'm still 5!
I treat you as if the shadow from the worst day of our lives is going to suffocate you and take you from us too!
Unable to win with words, Maelle is left with no choice but to fight for what she wants. The final showdown, and a daughter wrestling free from the control of her parents. Soaring just as Renoir hoped she would, just not in the way he hoped. But Renoir's protectiveness is also understandable. He just wants his family safe from this canvas that Aline and Alicia are willing to trade their lives for. Now, if you have defeated Simon, or just done a bunch more exploring first, then I would recommend multiplying enemy health in the Challenges tab. Possibly even by 100, else you'll probably just one-shot Renoir and miss all the epicness of this final showdown. Halfway through the first fight, Renoir will summon all 4 Axons, his family, as he sees them, all standing behind him, providing heals, shields, buffs, and supporting attacks, making Renoir nigh on invincible. That is until the return of Aline, who must have found the hidden canvas back in the real world.
Aline, you're going to kill yourself. It's too soon for you to return to any canvas.
Locking into battle with her husband's painted reflection of her, Aline leaves Renoir without his heals, providing us with a window for victory.
This selfish Aline! Aline, look at Alicia.
Yes, she can't be here. It's supposed to be you and me. You against me?
Go home, Renoir. Go paint something else.
The only one who sees this.
Soaring on the pair of wings he made for his daughter, Renoir is dragged back down to Earth by us, as Maelle finally reaches for the stars.
Put aside the canvas. It's killing you both.
Not this time!
Severely weakened, all Renoir can do now is reiterate the danger that she's in.
Ironic. Your mother was the one who saved me when I lost myself in a canvas. She taught me how to safely use our gift. How to soar without flying too close to the sun. We painted hundreds of canvas worlds, pushing the very boundaries of creation. And she never let me forget that every day we spent here has a price. Since the fire, our family has crumbled. Lune in the canvas. Clair fighting a solitary war. You, a living ghost. Verso's death broke us. Want it to be fixed. I need it to be fixed. I cannot lose you too.
Don't you see? That's how I feel about them. I can't lose them either. I've lost too much. Papa, see? I've lost so much.
We both lost so much.
I don't want to lose you either. I'm not leaving you forever. Just a little longer.
I want to trust you, but...
You can.
Keep the light on for you. I hope you find peace. Hold on to each other.
Finally, Renoir gives in, hoping that his choice will give Maelle the closure she needs to move on. This fight, after all, is likely the most alive he's seen her since the fire. But Verso, seeing the toll this place has taken on his mother in the real world and knowing the same fate awaits Alicia, will not permit that to happen.
Verso!
I'm sorry.
Finding himself in the heart of the canvas, Verso comes face to face with the soul of his real child self, the shadow he's been forced to live in for 100 years. Both of them caught in the middle of a grieving family and neither allowed to die. Both of these Versos are tired.
You're tired of painting, aren't you? I'm tired too.
You shouldn't be able to be here.
Mamon's gift.
Why did you run in? It's dangerous for you here.
See things as they are, not how you want them to be.
What?
You lied to your father.
No.
He saw it too. But he wanted to believe. You're going to die here. Why don't you just leave? You can always come back.
The moment I leave, Papa will erase this canvas.
This is not worth your life.
What life? My life of loneliness in a shell of a body, with no voice and no future.
You're Maelle. No matter where you are, you don't need this canvas.
But everything I want is here. Here I have a chance to live, Verso, to live. Out there I merely exist.
Life keeps forcing cruel choices.
Stop quoting Papa!
It's time to stop painting.
With Verso's soul now caught between the desires of Maelle and his painted self, it's up to us to decide the fate of the canvas. Do we let Maelle live out her days here, happy but slowly dying on the outside? I mean, she's only been here for 16 years and her parents lasted at least 67, though that's perhaps unimportant if she can never bring herself to leave. Or we can give Verso what he wants, force Alicia to return to the real world to her family and let the canvas be destroyed. So let's start with the first option, triggering the ending A Life to Paint. With Verso now defeated and realizing he'll never get what he wants, all he can do now is beg.
Please. Thank you. Stop him from painting.
Don't say that. Please, don't say that.
Please, listen to me. Only you can do this. You can do this, please. Unpaint me. Unpaint me.
So...
Please. I don't want this life.
Stop saying that.
I don't want this life. I don't want this life.
I just wanted to live this lifetime together. This lifetime that was stolen from us. Please. Bro. Please.
I don't want this life.
But Maelle, having already lost a brother twice, cannot go through that again, forcing Verso to remain alive, for her, whether he wants it or not.
If you could grow old, would you find a reason to smile?
In the end, whilst not allowing him to die, Maelle gives Verso the life he once wanted. Jumping forward, we return to Lumière, where now all the people that were lost have been brought back by Maelle. Sciel's husband Pierre, Sophie and Gustave, even Verso's soul is given a proper life inside this world, transformed from faceless husk into a real boy. All gathering at the Opera House, where now a much more aged Verso gets to live his dream performing piano concertos. But as he goes to play, it's clear not all is as perfect as it seems. Try as she might, Maelle does not belong here, with her body back in the outside world, clearly and slowly dying. Then again, letting Verso have his way isn't exactly a good outcome either. Back in the heart of the canvas, this time Verso forces Maelle to face reality.
Verso, stop! You can't just decide this for everyone!
We're all hypocrites, doing the same thing to each other.
Don't do this. Don't leave me again.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, huh? You've got this incredible power to paint. You'll never have to suffer a life you don't want. You're okay.
Forcing Maelle from the canvas, Verso makes a fair point that Maelle can still spend so much of her life inside paintings if she wants. Just not this one. With too much of her family's past contained within, Verso knows she could never willingly leave. Other canvas worlds may never quite match this one, but as she grows older, no doubt Maelle can learn to live in them safely, without the risk of becoming addicted. Unfortunately for everyone else, this means the end.
I will miss you guys.
With nothing left to be done, everyone, even Lune, takes a seat and gives in.
It's okay. It's over. Verso.
As Verso leads away the last fragment of his soul, the canvas is destroyed forever. Back in the real world, the Descendre family gather over Verso's memorial. Aline and Renoir joining together hand in hand as Alicia clutches the toy of Esquie. On Verso's grave, it reads, Beloved Verso Descendre, 22nd of February 1879 to 33rd of December 1905. Forever painted in our hearts. Again, his dying on a date that isn't real may just hint that this world too is not quite what it seems, but far as we know, this is the outer layer of reality, where the remnants of this family must now face the future together. It's not happy by any means. Renoir and Aline make up finally, which is something, but Clair immediately leaves this whole scene, no doubt still focused on fighting the writers. Eventually, Maelle, Alicia, is left at Verso's graveside alone, left with the memories of the friends she made inside her brother's canvas, whom she's now lost too. Perhaps her future self will thank Verso for that, for giving her back the life she had in the real world. A life to love. She may not want it right now, but in the future, who knows? If anything, her time in the canvas did restore the confidence Alicia needs to reach the stars like her Axon. Maybe. Though of the two immediate aftermaths, Maelle appears significantly happier in A Life to Paint. Neither of these endings are designed to be good, but I think they boil down to a choice between Maelle's present and her future. Immediate gratification with long-term negative effects, or a painful goodbye right now for a chance to soar later. But only a chance. And indeed, canvas life may have been the only thing keeping her from a lifetime of despair. But I guess without further stories, we'll never truly know. But we should also consider the fates of everybody inside the canvas. People who the real Verso believes are no less alive than those outside. Is it better for them to live a happy life they always dreamed, their every desire indulged by a benevolent god, or to face eternal oblivion for the long-term betterment of said god? If a third outcome existed, where the canvas remained and could be revisited from time to time, then that would be ideal. But the whole point of this story is to prove that that simply isn't possible. The Descendre family cannot move past Verso's death, with this fragment of his soul looming over them, tempting them into a life more pleasant than their tragic reality. A vivid recreation of pieces of their past, like Monoco, and a painted family, living the life that could have been. The ultimate trap for Aline and Alicia's grief. There's no right answer on which is the best ending of these two, especially given one involves the deaths of all the other characters and one doesn't. But I will say that A Life to Paint feels like choosing denial or bargaining, with A Life to Love the only path to acceptance. But let me know in the comments which ending you prefer to Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and why. Please do discuss your own thoughts and theories down below too. I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on all of it. Massive thanks to the patrons and channel members as always for supporting me in producing crazy videos like this, and thank you all for watching. I'm Sam Bram, and as technically the first person to ever view this video, I wish an excellent day for those who come after.